I was learning how to write. I was learning the craft.
Well, shit, a lot of these stories would make really good, books.
I actually started with poetry as a kid, 'cause I like the rhyming stuff. So I used to write poems and stuff as a kid.
Where I cut my teeth and learned a lot was from reading a bunch of the screenwriting books and then writing a bunch of crappy screenplays.
Ever since I can remember writing, I started writing stories.
I think writing becomes like a drug. Like once you start, it's really hard to actually stop yourself.
Instead of going out with your friends, you're inside chasing the dragon of having breakthroughs with stories and characters and finding those perfect lines.
Use the rhythm of the story to, control how the audience sees the story.
And if you just read the words on the page, you're not engaging in it.
You can tell more of a story with a facial expression than you can from a huge word balloon taking up half the panel.
Sometimes as a writer, you wonder what the hell you're doing.
If you ever think that, am I just making it in the Kantian sense? Am I just making this up? Am I really alive? Am I really experiencing? Am I just an illusion?
The problem with fiction is reality.
You do not want your reader to feel let down.
I can do this. I think I can do this, but I want to do this.
Like when you give somebody a piece of poetry, and it can be someone who hates poetry, and then they read it, and you see that light hit, and you go, oh, I did it. All right, welcome to episode 4 of Writing Prose. That was our new snazzy intro video that I totally did not just spend 8 hours doing.
Trey badass, if I may say so.
It came out really good.
So before we get started on our topic, let's go around for our awesome panel. And just like every other time, there is a good chance that people are going to dip in and dip out as needed, which is totally cool. Completely laid back stream. But we've got Indy Dave.
Hey, how's it going?
Hail Indy
Next
Dave.
to him is super awesome Will.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Hail Will.
Down below, we've got Odin.
What's up, guys?
Odin. Hail Odin.
Salve.
Oh, goodness.
We've also got Luke, Death Metal Hero. How you doing, sir?
Hail.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hail,
Doing
Luke.
well. How are you? Hail, panel.
And,
what's up, y'all?
Brian Christgau. How are you doing, sir?
Hail me. And hail Shay.
Brian.
Okay.
I'm doing okay. I actually had like a major breakthrough on my new project last night. So
cool.
It's like, it's the thing I'm doing with Preston Acevedo. It's a project that is his brainchild. He has asked me to kind of like resurrect it, bring it to life. There's a little preview.
Oh, hold up. We're all about previews.
Ooh.
Oh my gosh.
Ooh. Hey.
Nice creepy.
And the book will be called Nine Devils.
That looks cool.
It's
cool.
It is. It is with
it's good.
With the cathedral.
Oh god.
Fantastic. Religious airship.
Yes,
that sounds
it is.
about right for the two of you. Well,
Bibles across the world.
Before we spiral out of topic, before we've ever even started, let's go ahead and introduce our topic for this show, which is fear. Now, this came about after we were doing last week's show, where we, spiraled into everything, and loosely kept it on theme because we tried really hard. But I'm blaming Odin, and now I got Odin and Brian, and I'm telling you right up front, I will mute, and you both know this.
Please.
Hey man, I already promised no Greek mythology talk from me today.
Thank you.
I enjoyed that stuff personally, but you know me, I require adult supervision. So
we have had this conversation many times.
You're in the wrong place.
No problem. But basically what I was wanting to do, because obviously I'm working on an anthology that's all horror themed. And one of the things that I'm finding probably the most interesting and also challenging is trying to find things that are kind of universally scary. And so I figured we could start this not to give any enemies secrets to how they could take us down, but let's start it with, what are some of your guys' biggest fears?
Spiders. I don't like spiders.
Arachnophobia. Oh, man. So I live down in Florida, right? The bugs down here will whip out a knife and try to fight you for, the food on your plate. We moved down here when I was like 5, okay? And we rented Arachnophobia from the video store, right?
Oh.
We watched that shit. I'm seeing giant spiders crawling on the ceiling and the walls in the bedroom that I'm staying in.
Not a good thing to do.
No, because the next day I went outside and I discovered what we call banana spiders down here. I'm not particularly sure what, but they've got these long black needle-like legs and they've got this long banana-looking body, and they're huge.
They're like this big. They're humongous. I've seen them. Yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
Right. So their webbing is really strong, like really strong. So I found one up above the compost heap out at my grandparents' house. I took a stick that was probably about that big around. I tossed it up into the web, and it just stuck there. Didn't knock the web down, just stuck there. Okay?
That's metal.
The spider looked at me like, motherfucker, why did you do that? Like, sorry, I'm going back this way. Bye. Nuh-uh.
So it's funny that you say spiders. I used to be terrified of spiders, but living here, every summer we have an orb weaver who it's got to be the same one, because he's learned over the years. He always comes and he builds a web, but he builds it in between the posts of my deck. Mm-hmm. So he built it one year in the actual. I don't know who is.
You have a ghost?
That is.
That's what I was thinking.
Is that like the tied up gigolo in the closet? Like, what's going on over there?
Yeah, tell your gimp to behave himself.
Oh God, here we go. I was wondering
we're not going down this path, damn it. Yeah. We're not doing it. Anyway, so he built his nest one time, his web in between the posts of my door. And so when I opened it up, it was just head level, because I'm 6'1". There's this giant web. So after almost walking into it, I go on and knock it down, and I swear he was like, "Oh, okay, all right, I see what we're doing now." So then he goes and put it in between two posts. Well, then my dog knocked it down, and he was like, "Okay, so I can only bring my web down so far." So he started building his web to where he knew I wasn't going to walk through, and it was a dog to catch, but that still caught all of the bugs. And I was like, you know what, dude, we can live like this. I'm okay like this. So I'm far less terrified of spiders now. One gets on me and it's game over. But like they can chill in my house and be like, hey, just you stay there, I stay here, we're cool.
I let one live right above my door, right up until it laid an egg sack, and I was like, no, sorry, no. And I kind of scooped it up with a stick on the web, and I moved it somewhere else. What were you gonna say? Sorry.
As long as they stay outside, I don't care. But if there's one in my house, it's game over. No.
Well, we've got black widows out here like crazy too. So every time I turn around, there's like another black widow, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna kill with the shoe, because I don't care how beneficial you are.
You like living and what have you.
Well, I have parrots. Like, that's not gonna work. You buy a parrot, they're gonna die from that. They're way too small. Okay, so
never had birds because I always had way too many cats. Like at least 5 cats in the house growing up at any given time. Yeah, birds wouldn't survive.
Yeah, that's not usually a good mix. All right, what are some other fears you guys have? Arachnophobia,
failure.
Oh man,
Brian coming out. Just
I played Dark Souls too much.
We were all thinking
it. To be a fear, because like that comes in hand with the territory. I just learned from it, move on.
Dark Souls will teach you how to be stubborn as hell, is what Dark Souls will teach you how to do.
Yes, it will. Ram your head into the wall 1,000,000 times till it cracks. That's how you win.
Your head cracks or the wall cracks.
No, just the wall. Too hard-headed. for fear, man, something that I'm afraid of, and I'm not trying to sound like that douchey guy that's like, oh, I'm not afraid of anything, because I definitely do have fears. Those things.
There's nothing that springs to mind.
It really, because like my whole thing is that most of the things that I have experienced, like there are things that might make me a little uneasy, but like most of the things I'm afraid of are things that I can't like quantify or understand. They're like beyond. Dark is very unsettling, and the big reason why is because there's a point where like when you're in like real darkness, I'm not talking about like in your house with the light off and what have you at nighttime. I'm talking about being in an area where you literally can't see your hand 2 feet in front of you, right? And there's no light coming in from the nighttime or anything like that. Like I'd say that would probably be a pretty good one, because like you don't know what's out there, you don't know anything, and I feel like that's kind of like that's the whole basis behind fear, right? Is we fear what we don't understand, we fear what we can't comprehend, and like that's
we fear what we don't know.
Exactly, and so like, that's like the ultimate thing. You have no idea to comprehend what's out there because you can't see it, you can't hear it, like you're just in, you kind of feel like you're in this void.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of goes into, so I'm not usually afraid of like if I watch a slasher film or whatever and it's a dude, like that doesn't scare me, because as long as you're a human, you're going to respond in the same way for certain things. If I hit you hard enough in your nose, your eyes will water. That's physiology. If you're a dude and I kick you between the legs, you're probably going to not feel great. Bones break.
If I hit you in the sternum with a sledgehammer, you're going to collapse.
Right, exactly.
You have a chance. You have a chance against a human.
Right. The things that scare me are the things that don't behave within our world's parameters. So when you start talking about demons, you start talking about ghosts or spirits, you start talking about insanity, losing your grip on reality and your understanding of what is and what isn't. Those are terrifying, because there is no amount of logic, reason, preparation. There is nothing you can do to prepare you to get past that. That's just all barriers of our world break down and there's nothing left.
Well, the logic of our world breaks down. It doesn't apply to that side of the world. It's that side of reality.
Exactly.
Well, that's the part of horror that has always been subversive.
Mm-hmm.
That's why horror films have always been subversive, because they're telling you that the world as you think it isn't that way after all, and it totally turns things upside down. Like suddenly corpses are coming out of the ground, people are turning into werewolves, your neighbor's a vampire, that sort of a thing. I know I have a lot of millennial friends. They are not afraid of monsters, like, because they can't sort of stretch their imagination that far, but they're afraid of like a maniac with a machete, right? Or they're afraid of Jigsaw or a character like that. They find that, I know, that's sad. It's sad, right?
I'm sorry.
Right?
I watched the first Saw movie and I was like, ha! Wouldn't it be funny if the dude laying on the floor was the killer? And when that motherfucker got up at the end, I was like, nope, I'm done.
Yeah,
I don't think that's too off, by the way.
Like,
I don't think it's too off for them to be afraid of that sort of thing, because if you understand why horror exists as a genre and where it comes from, right? It's a response to the French Revolution and the Enlightenment, right? So the genre was literally born by Mary Shelley. We've talked about this before.
Yes.
With Frankenstein
and science fiction too.
Well,
there was other stuff that was more sci-fi before,
right? But
Mary Shelley's more horror. Yeah,
the genre of horror
tone. Yeah.
Was born with Frankenstein, and the idea there was to be able to speak back morality at a vacuum of morality. Essentially, that's what horror functions as. So when you say that it's kind of weird, they're afraid of Jigsaw. Well, yeah, the society's breaking down. the law and order is breaking down, how we treat each other, and morals are becoming more relative. So they're freaked out that some guy might just kidnap them and do weird shit to them in a basement.
They're gonna have to be a real strong motherfucker to kidnap me, yo.
Yeah, I have a friend. His name
Either
is
that or have a lot of chloroform.
Yeah, I have a friend. I have a friend who's hanging out in my closet right now. His name is Mr. Remington 870. You know what? But what is Mr. Remington 870 going to do to Jigsaw? It's going to turn him into a hamburger. But what's it going to do to a demon? What's it going to do to a djinn? What's it going to do to a zombie? Well, it can take out a couple of zombies, but what if there's like 100 of them, right?
I mean, if it's got a physical body, you'd be surprised at what dies when it gets its head cut off. You know,
Right.
as long as it's got a physical body.
Right, but what if it's like the Green Knight, right? And you cut his head off, and he just picks his head back up and puts it back on his shoulders.
Immolation. Pure immolation with napalm.
Flamethrower too. That would be my guess as well.
What I'm seeing here is two definitions of fear that's happening right now, and I think it'd help the panel if we defined it a little bit. Like,
Sure.
I remember the best definition I saw of fear was, I think, from C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis, where he talked about the two reactions you have of two different reactions of fear, right? So the first one is if you're sitting in your room and somebody tells you there's a tiger next door, you're going to be afraid of that tiger because it could come and maul you and hurt you and do damage to your body. You're not afraid. You're not afraid that it's a tiger. You're afraid that it's going to come maul you. It's not the fact that there is a tiger. You're not afraid of tigerness.
You're afraid of
not the thing.
Right. What if somebody tells you there's a ghost, it's not that you're afraid the ghost is going to maul you. You're scared that there's a fucking ghost and that it actually exists. That's what's scaring you. So there's a difference between bodily fear and dread. Because now you're reminded that there's something maybe above here and you feel very small. It's a Lovecraftian effect.
Yeah.
That existential dread.
Yeah. And
so it's dread.
Yes. And that is what the horror film is all about. It's all about dread. That's what the horror genre is all about. It's all about dread. Now, of course, if you look at like a lot of modern horror writers, or I should say modern horror film, especially like with the jump scare movies, there's not a speck of dread to be found in those.
You want to talk about dread? You ever seen the original Black Christmas from 1974?
Great film.
Only about, 30 or 40 times. So
that is my favorite like proto slasher flick. Fun fact: it was the same dude that directed A Christmas Story.
Yes, and also Porky's, and children shouldn't play with dead things.
Yep,
I remember that one.
Yeah, and that's an incredible film, and it has a really powerful sense of dread. And one of the things I find so spooky about it is that phone call that they get in the beginning. Now, of course, you know, Jay, if you've never seen this film before, it's astounding. It's an absolute must see. I was lucky enough to see it on a big screen with Joe Bob Briggs introducing it. That was
no shit.
Yeah,
I'll drink to that skull.
Yeah, and of course. Not to get off topic, but SJW is coming at my man Joe Bob hard right now. But there's a scene in that movie. The rest of the fellas here, if you've seen it, you might know the one I'm talking about. When they get the first phone call, and of course, it's the maniac in the attic.
Well, okay. Don't spoil. I know it happens early. I know.
It happens early. It's the first. That's the actual. Like first moments of the movie. Halloween totally fucking jacked that shit, right? So they get the phone call and you're thinking, okay, there's a maniac, right? But then you start hearing all of these voices and you're thinking to yourself, there's more than one voice there. And that is when every time I watch that movie, it's like, I like cold water gets poured down my spine because I think of that Bible verse. Our name is Legion, for we are many.
Oh yeah, schizophrenia.
I would
or demonic possession.
Sure.
I would say that there are movies that have had dread that don't necessarily have a supernatural element to them, though.
Sure.
Like Shutter Island does a fantastic job of filling you with dread because this guy is like, he's investigating a murder in an insane asylum, and he's himself kind of coming apart at the seams and is having all these flashbacks to to all of the stuff that he went through between his experience in the war and then what happened with his wife after the war. And I think that the big thing with dread and suspense is creating something that an audience is afraid of, not because of, what Will was saying, where like you're not scared of it because of the ready harm that it could cause to you, but because it has such a grand weight.
Mm-hmm. That it's there,
like there's a really great line. I'm sorry to step on you.
No, you're all good.
Okay. Okay, yeah, because I want to elaborate on what you said. There was a TV series called Werewolf. It was in like the 1980s. It had special makeup effects by Rick Baker. It had I'm trying to think who Scorzani was. It was the guy who played the rifleman, Chuck Connors, right? As this evil werewolf named Scorzani, who bites this innocent guy, and he turns into a werewolf. And the show sucked because it was basically the Incredible Hulk, right? Yeah. And
but with werewolves.
But with a werewolf, and the werewolf's face was always caught in a perpetual snarl, so it wasn't very good. But in the pilot episode, there's an absolutely magnificent little piece of writing where this character, who is a werewolf hunter, is talking about Alice in Wonderland, right? And how Alice is hanging out in a garden, and a flower starts talking to her, and she starts talking back to the flower. And he says, "Let it be known that if a flower were to speak to a man, that man would know fear." Right? So, because what are you thinking when you're presented with something like a ghost, like an angel, like a demon? I know first thing that's going to go through my mind. I'd be like, okay, it finally happened. Way too many nights, staying up till dawn, watching horror movies, hitting the bong, and it finally happened. My mind finally said, fuck it, and just cracked. Right? And then, of course, there's the second possibility, which is that what you're seeing is real, and that's terrifying, too.
I'll tell you, when I'm watching a movie, like you can watch a Godzilla movie, the biggest monster in the world destroying the city, and you laugh and you like, yeah, that's awesome, woohoo!
Godzilla.
Show me a movie with a bunch of little tiny monsters. That will freak me the fuck out. Like The Gate from 1994 or whatever. Those little demons scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, you must be a Charles Band fan, because Charles Band made
Puppet Master. Yeah.
A billion movies. Like, he's obsessed with like little monsters and homunculi and things like that.
We watched The Littles with my daughter when she was like 4 or 5, and we watched a whole bunch of episodes on Netflix when it was on or something like that. And I asked my daughter one time, I said, "What would you do if you saw one of those things in the house?" She goes, "I'd step on it."
Don't be afraid of the dark. Have you ever seen that? I'm not talking about the Guillermo del Toro produced remake. I'm talking about the original Dan Curtis TV movie. It's incredibly creepy. Where there are these little monsters, these little like demons, these little homunculi that like are living in the house, and they're trying to like pull this woman into I think like the grate where you push the ashes in the fireplace. It's you've never seen that? Does and nobody?
It's unfamiliar.
It's incredible. It's incredible, and you had this big budget remake, and it doesn't have a speck of fear in it. Not a speck of fear. Now you look at something like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. That movie, the original Night of the Living Dead. Those are out to get you. They're not fucking around. They're not being nice. They're out to hurt you.
They're out to drive that visceral fear into you. Like, you're going to feel this movie.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a feeling of terror and dread. That's the thing, is there are different types of dread. There are different ways to get there. You can be very subtle. You can be like Shirley Jackson, The Haunting of Hill House, right?
Oh, yeah.
Something walks there, but whatever it is, it walks alone. And then you have the opposite of Hill House, which is the Overlook Hotel in The Shining, right? and the Overlook Hotel, it's the opposite. It's collecting souls.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like in Stephen King's Cat's Eye. Of all the things, the scariest story to me was the little thing that the cat had to fight at the very end. All of the other stories they're more thrillers than horror. But that last one with the little monster, and when it comes out of the wall like folds back, and then the little creature comes out, and it's there to steal the little girl's breath. It's just there to climb on her chest and suck in all her breath and kill her that way. And it was just, to me, that was the scariest of that one.
The person who does Fear and Dread the best right now in terms of filmmakers, without a doubt, it's David Lynch. The third season of Twin Peaks, which came out last year, I agree with Jim Jarmusch that is a horror masterpiece. The demons in that are terrifying. And
look at that. I've been meaning to get on Twin Peaks, and like my buddy who's a huge horror aficionado was like, "You need to see Twin Peaks." And it's on my list. It's one of those like horror was never really
5,000 things on your list.
Well, the series,
you need to start making time for shit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Like I'm doing what I can, and like I think one of the biggest problems for me is like I have a job where I can totally do it. Like I work 12 hours and I sit around and do nothing for 12 hours, and so I usually binge stuff. And so like what'll happen is I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna go watch this, and then it'll be like, oh, cool, they have Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix. Let me go watch that for like the 20 millionth time. Because you can never go wrong. Like
Futurama.
Like it'll just be. I just use that as an example because it recently just happened. Like I was literally going to sit down and watch like a new show that my buddy had told me about, and then I went on to Netflix to go watch it, and the first thing that popped up in my face was Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I went, "You can never go wrong with this."
Exactly, old reliable, and I'm terrible like that too.
So one of the things that I've really noticed that has been kind of a letdown. So I used to be horrified by any kind of horror show. Like growing up, my mom hated them. My mom would never let me watch any of them. So the slightest little, I think I went to a sleepover at like 12 and they were watching Chucky. And I had a panic attack because I was like, a doll coming to life and killing you. And I was like, I have many dolls sitting in my bedroom. Like, I can't handle this shit. And so I didn't get into any of like horror as a kid, even as a teen. Like I remember going to a haunted house, and this was, gosh, I was 18. This is how bad this was. I was 18 years old. I went to a haunted house as the after dance activity that we did. And it was me and my boyfriend at the time and another couple. And I was watching this stagehand dude who worked for the place who hated his job and hated his life. And he's dressed in all black. He's got a headset. He couldn't look more bored. And he's got a baby pram, right? And he's just rocking it back and forth. And he's counting people in line. And every like fifth person, he rolls it up to him. This little mutilated baby thing pops out, real cheesy, little arms flailing, and it plays this like horrifying baby screech demon sound, right? So I notice this, I count, and I go, okay, I'm 5. And I was like, now I know it's gonna pop up. Nothing's gonna happen. That thing popped up and grazed my arm. And then next thing I remember is running through the parking lot, knocking over a 2-year-old who had been through the haunted house 3 times. Yes. The only time he cried was when I knocked him on his face in the parking lot. And then I was so embarrassed, I just kept running until I got to the car. My boyfriend couldn't even catch me. He was laughing so hard until I knocked the kid over.
Amazing. To turn this story around here, this story actually brings up another huge element with the horror genre and bringing up dread and fear is sound.
Oh God, yes.
Sound is the most, like, especially when we're talking about the genre of film and what have you. Oh God, sound is the most important thing.
Sound design.
And like, probably one of my favorite things that I've ever seen, and this isn't necessarily film, but like if you watched the original Broadway production of Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street.
Yes.
Every single time like an act would end, you'd have that shrill of the oven. And you know what it stands for. And you're just like, oh my God, it sends goosebumps down. Even talking about it, I just got like a chill. Like, sound is one of the most integral points, especially when you're doing something like film. Because like obviously, you know, going into comics, it's not something that you're gonna be having, but like sound is so integral to the horror genre. Like you can make a scene so impactful by having like everything be quiet and then a pin drops while the serial killer is walking by. And
so
you're horrified.
while I agree to a point, the funny thing is the sound isn't what got me in that situation, because I was stood in line. I heard the sound over and over and over and over again. What got me was the barrier was broken, because there was a rule of how this was going to go down. But a little tiny finger hit me, and the second it hit me, like I always thought I was going to fight. I thought fight, flight, or freeze. I thought fight 100%. Apparently, that is not always the case, because I fled faster than I've ever ran. Like, if I ever need a better PT time, I just need someone to chase me with the threat of some like creepy little arm touching me, and I apparently will get the best time in my life.
Just have some giant goon dressed up as Leatherface and like a chainless chainsaw going "Roar!" and like waving it around.
They do that at Universal Horror Nights or whatever it is. They have dudes walking around with chainless chainsaws.
Yeah, and you know what? Just speaking of that, there, you know, the jump scare itself, as much as I despise jump scare movies, but by the way, there are a lot of theaters in England right now that refuse to show them because evidently the audiences go crazy and start tearing up the seats. I don't know what the fuck that's about, right?
They're English.
They are still Hail CG UK. Many apologies, but you know, like the jump scare itself is a cheap shot, right?
Yeah,
but when it's done the right way, it actually will help keep you on your toes. I'm thinking of like the jump scare that's in Halloween, right?
Yeah.
Where Loomis is like fucking with these little kids, and then suddenly Tom Atkins' hand comes out, and, right? That helps kind of keep you a little on guard. The best jump scare that I can think of is in Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, which is the movie that Rob Zombie keeps remaking over and over and over again, right?
I thought that was Halloween that he keeps remaking.
No, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, because nobody's seen it, right? Except for freaks like me. And I actually think it's the best American horror film of the 80s. And evidently he does too. But there's a great moment in that where, you know, where Chop Top, Bill Moseley, is terrorizing this DJ. And the tension is just building and building. She's in a room with a lunatic. Now, what is everybody afraid of? Bruce Lee was asked, like, is there anybody you're afraid to fight, dude? And he said, yeah. Who? A lunatic. The most hardened criminal, the biggest badass in the world, is afraid of one type of person, a lunatic, right? She's in the room with one. And so she's giving him the tour of the place, right? Trying to, like, get this guy out the fucking door. And she turns on a light, and boom, out comes Leatherface with a chainsaw. And it is classic. And it makes you jump out of your skin. And then what's the next thing that happens after you've been got by a good jump scare? You laugh. And then...
not always.
Not always.
I disagree. So...
well, that one I did, but go ahead.
I have my favorite jump scare that ever happened is from a movie that is apparently a controversial one to say that it's good, but I really, really loved was it the Yeah, Poltergeist 3.
Oh, Poltergeist 3 is excellent, I think.
I know a lot of people, or I'm sorry, Exorcist 3. That's what I was going for.
Yeah. I love
Okay.
that movie.
So there's been a lot of people that told me it was really good, and people that told me they thought it was terrible.
It's
I'm going to
awesome.
show you the scene that got me because this is my most favorite.
Is it the scissors one?
My most favorite part. It's the best jump scare I have ever seen. So if you haven't seen this,
and has everyone on the panel seen this movie?
Yes.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Okay. The absolute just
banality of this scene up until this point. There is nothing special going on. It's I was paying so much attention to the cops in the background. I was like, it's going to be something with the cop. And then he left and I was like, oh shit, now the cop's gone. It's going to be something like that. And then he came back and I went, what the fuck am I even watching? And I sat there for so long watching this, and you hear her putting down a clipboard, picking up a clipboard, putting down a pen, and there was just nothing happening for so long. And then the second this hit, I legitimately screamed because I was just like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, this movie, and then that happened. I was like, holy fucking shit! And it's like a split second and it's done.
False insecurity.
You instantly move on to something else, and you don't even have time to fully process what you just saw. And so you just sat there like, oh my god, what just happened?
That goes in what Brian was just saying, is that like jump scares, I feel like the way that jump scares are handled in a lot of movies is they're over gratuitous. I mean, that's the entirety of the Saw franchise. It's just it's like gratuitous.
Well, it's
violence.
also a gore porn series.
Yeah, like that's what I mean. Like it's just violent imagery with jump scares. But when you earn it, when you build up everything.
Yeah.
House of a Thousand Corpses is a great film. Just saw that on the live set.
I didn't like it. I felt like House of a Thousand Corpses was derivative of everything that had come before.
It's a remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, but to each their own.
Like I had a great time with it. Like I can I like Rob Zombie movies.
But hold on, wait.
I love his music.
Did you enjoy it, or were you scared by it? Because those are two very
different. I wouldn't say I was scared by it. It was an enjoyable movie. Like I wouldn't call it like a horror classic at all.
Well, and I think that's an important thing to kind of differentiate is you can watch horror shows and enjoy them, but not have them last with you. But there are certain ways that people manage to tell certain stories or tropes that go through, or certain moments that give you that just straight through to your skeletal bones, like fear.
Yes,
the scariest thing you've ever seen, and it'll be every time you shut off the lights in your kitchen when you're trying to walk down the hall to go to bed. You have that moment of I kind of want to run, because it'll pop into your head. 3 years later, you haven't even thought of it, but it's stuck with you so much.
You know what used to really do that to me growing up was there was an old show on Nick called Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yep.
And the show itself wasn't bad, but the opening credits for Are You Afraid of the Dark gave me fucking chills. And like every single time I'd be like walking at night and I'd walk by a playground and I'd see a swing set, I'd just be like, yep, I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
I'm done. I'm going home.
It's, there's a Usenet group that used to exist called alt.horror. And one of the big discussions that we would always have on there was, boy, aren't you envious of regular people? Because they can still be scared by a horror film.
Yeah.
So when a horror film actually gets me, then I'm like, oh my God, if this gave me the creeps, it's going to terrify regular
somebody
people.
else. Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've had a horror movie actually like scare me viscerally.
Right?
Because I'm literally that dude, right in the eye. You know? Like,
Yep. But there are certain films that still get me. I think the third reel of Lucio Fulci's House by the Cemetery.
Oh,
I think that
I watched that the other night, actually.
Oh, did you?
Nice.
Yeah. What did you think of it?
I mean, I've seen it, but are you talking about the Which okay, I don't want to give anything away. Are you talking
Dr.
about
Freudstein.
Okay, when they actually show him?
Yeah, when you're in that basement, and it's basically a little boy's nightmare.
Yep, and the eyes, right? The Dario Argento eyes.
No, no, it's Lucio Fulci.
No, but I call it the Dario Argento eyes because in Suspiria he likes to do the
oh, okay,
eyes.
gotcha. Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
They like to use those to really show you an eye in the darkness. It's sort of kind of derivative of what the guy did in It, where it's just two orbs. Remember in the basement?
Did you
but this one is like backlit.
Yep.
The original Amityville Horror that still gets me. The one scene where the mom is in the kitchen. It's the same thing with the eyes. The mom's in the kitchen and she looks out the window and there's just the two eyes floating there. That I watched that when I was probably 15 in the dark on Halloween, and that, oh my God, that put me out. That scared the crap out of me.
I mean, the only thing I can think of in the last 2 years that really unsettled me, like I don't get scared by movies, I just don't. But the one did unsettle me in the last 2 years, and it was a film from the 80s. It was called The Entity.
Oh, that's a great movie. I love
that movie. Really like that. Like I was thinking about that for a long time, and it really did unsettle me. For the obvious reason that we're dealing with a supernatural entity, so you get the dread factor. But what was happening to that woman, and the fact that this entity had it out for her and was essentially violating her at will, in front of her family, when she was taking a bath, when she was by herself. Essentially, Shay, it's about a woman who's essentially being brutally raped by a gang of entities, like at random in her home.
Right, because there are little ones that are holding her down.
Yeah, and it's based on a true story apparently. But it would just not leave her alone and would just randomly assault her. We should be sitting there talking to her kids, and it would just sexually assault her in front of her kids. And the idea that this thing will not leave you alone, you can't see it coming, and you're at at its mercy, that really unsettled me, especially the ending where they're trying to trap it.
I love that.
I haven't seen it yet, but that's
they try to freeze it. Yeah,
they kind of went that angle with the Invisible Man remake that they did recently.
It sounds like, but
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it yet. I've heard some people really enjoyed it, and I've heard other people that didn't. I haven't. I can't make a judgment off of it outside of what I saw in the trailers. And I thought that one of the things that I really did like was essentially this girl had a breakup with a super possessive ex, and then he's the Invisible Man, and he's freaking he's there at all times. And I was like, that would be utterly horrifying. I think anybody would be in a position to be if you took the most psychotic person you ever dated, and that person discovered how to be invisible and was literally just following you around your house all day and was just fucking with you.
Yeah, and then not even I'm not even going to kill you. I'm just going to fuck your life up and make people think you're something that you're not.
Exactly. That would fuck me up.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie up until you get to the point where you discover that there's no Invisible Man in the movie. And I'm not going to drop any spoilers. But there's a moment where you find out how the Invisible Man turns invisible, and it's a huge womp womp womp.
Is it like High Tension? Where you're like, this is really cool, and then you're like, oh, it's one of those movies.
Yeah, they didn't have an ending. Yeah, that's why you always have to have your ending when you start.
That's how I felt when I was watching Attack on Titan. I'm a huge Berserk fan.
Oh, me too.
When I first started watching Attack on Titan, and they got to the point where Eren gets eaten by a Titan in the second or third episode, I was like, oh fuck yeah! Eren was a red herring protagonist, and now everybody's going to have to rally and get their shit together, and we're gonna have a just full on suicide run for the rest of the series. And then Eren becomes a giant. A giant freaking Titan
killer.
Titans, and I'm just like, this is dumb.
Yeah,
this turned into every other shonen anime, and
the Titans are terrifying. Terrifying with those grins on their faces.
Yeah, well, and that was the thing is that again,
as
someone who's a huge fan of Berserk, and Like I was like, fuck yeah, like I'm all down because man, you want to talk about fear. Oh man, what a great character to talk about fear with when it comes down to Guts.
Yeah, man.
Oh man. Like he doesn't really have any of it left. He's been completely stripped of anything.
He's literally been to hell, and when you finally see hell, well, that's the thing is, something bad has happened to him in the Golden Age arc, right?
Well, yeah, like
you finally get to see what it is. It's 100 times worse than anything.
That's the genius of the Golden Age. It's just like the Golden Age. You had these are like the best years of Guts's life, and they're still not all that great. When you look at it,
no, they're pretty awful. They're pretty awful.
But these are the times that he considers to be like his happy place.
Yeah,
and then you get to the point in the series where Griffith makes the sacrifice, and oh man, shit that Kentaro Miura put up,
genius.
Here's the thing that kind of segues into one of the things that I wanted to talk about when it comes to fear, because
for me, the story Berserk, it's like an epic, right? There's so much that goes on. It's a really, really well done story. There's a lot of really intense parts. It's not something I consider scary. It's something that I can read and I see the ideas behind what's happening. And I'm like, that's a horrifying idea, but it doesn't actually make me feel fear.
So
it makes me feel like there's something much bigger.
That's so rare. Go ahead.
So hold up. So how as a writer do you go, if you're trying to invoke that bit of fear, how do you make sure that you stay in the realm of something terrifying that's going to give your reader that feeling, and that you don't go into something that turns into, while a very good story, not something that is going to invoke that, because it's either, wow, that's a really unfortunate situation they're in, or, oh my gosh, that was, horrifying to see. But it's
I think the big answer to your question is, and I will say, so Berserk is not a horror book. There are times in the story that are very unsettling, and there are memes about it. Like you have the horse moment in where Farnese is with Guts, and the horse gets possessed by a demon, and it gets all crazy.
Oh yeah, creepy.
Like there are moments like that, but like the ultimate thing about writing horror, and the ultimate thing about creating that atmosphere that keeps the audience afraid, is the characters. Guts isn't afraid of anything that he fights. Like Guts understands what he is fighting. He understands their demonic apostles. He is on a war path to kill all of them. There are and that's why you have certain moments with other characters like Farnese, who, whenever you have a moment with Farnese in like her initial arcs that she's being brought in during the conviction arc, there are very scary moments with her, because you're seeing things through her point of view, and she's being introduced to this world that 2 days ago didn't exist. And so those moments are unsettling and creepy, and it can give you a little bit of a shiver. But then when you go back to Guts, who is the protagonist, Guts does not give a fuck.
Yup.
So basically what you're saying is
Guts is literally here to just murder people.
So what you're saying is it's not possible for you to invoke fear unless your main character is the one that is experiencing it.
Not necessarily the main character. The character is involved with your scene.
Imagery itself can be extremely terrifying. If you look at paintings, for instance, or if you want to talk about comic book horror artists, my God, Bernie Wrightson stands head and shoulders above everybody else in the horror genre, in the comic books medium, the same way that Frank Frazetta stands head and shoulders above everybody in the heroic fantasy field. Now,
Kaluta does a pretty
not
damn good job.
Who?
Michael Kaluta.
Oh, see,
he does some pretty damn good.
Dude, there's so many other. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of greats, but I'm talking about like Bernie. To me, is like
Kelly Jones. Yeah,
Yeah, so many, right? Berserk, of course, is not horror. It's heroic fantasy. But there's something about heroic fantasy and horror that are like peanut butter and chocolate. You go back to Robert E. Howard, right? You go back to the Conan stories, the Cull stories, the Solomon Kane stories. And those all have strong horror elements. I mean, my God.
Oh, absolutely.
H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard would borrow each other's gods.
Right? That's why you had that sense of existential dread within Conan.
Yeah, and there were times where Conan would face something like a monster out of a Lovecraft story that would make him go, fuck this, I'm running.
Yeah. Well, and that goes back to what I'm saying, is that at the end of the day, characters are your tool within the narrative to get a connection to your audience, right? Like
it's the reader's vehicle into the story.
Exactly.
How else are you going to get the readers into the story?
It's what they're invested in. So if a character shows up to a fight, or if a character goes up against something, and they aren't scared of it, then it doesn't matter how horrifyingly drawn that thing is. Dude, the trolls in Berserk.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely awful things. Like, they are genuinely terrifying. And like the first few times you see them, they're very scary. Right. But then when Guts goes up against them, you no longer give a shit. Again, once you put in a character that is in a position where they are no longer afraid, and you are invested into that character, because that's your vehicle into the narrative.
Devil May Cry, the video game. Devil May Cry.
Yeah. Dude, Dante doesn't give a shit. The amount of crazily designed demons and horrifying shit that pops up in Devil May Cry game, and it'll unsettle you for the first 5 seconds, and then Dante will come up and make a joke, and then you're like, okay, he clearly doesn't care, so I don't care.
Nothing to be afraid of. Power on.
So I'd really like to hear Will and Dave weigh in on this too, because I think that you guys are very polite and quiet, but also I'm really interested to kind of know, how do you think is the best way for you to kind of convey fear or horror? Let's start with Dave.
In comics, it's really hard because it's all visual, and this is a basic psychological thing. When you turn a page, your eyes scan the whole thing before you start reading. So it's hard to get that. You can't get really a jump scare in. You got to be like a Bernie Wrightson to have a really good scary image, and that's really rare. I don't care how good the artist is. It's really rare to have a really good scary image that really puts dread into you. You really have to build up the tension from the beginning and do like a payoff at the end. For me, a short story does that more than a full-size comic.
Sure.
What about you, Will?
So what I've noticed in the discussion is that we're relying too heavily on visuals and sounds, and we're talking about writing. And when you're writing prose or you're doing something for a comic, you can't really rely on the visuals of a film or the design of a film or camera tricks. So this is a bigger challenge that we have to kind of tackle here. Is what Shay just said, like, how do you actually create fear from a two-dimensional page? And the only thing I can think of at the moment, with my limited intelligence, is I think you gotta, for comics. I think with comics, it's gotta come like as Mike just said. It's gotta piggyback on the internal monologue of a character. I don't think you can jump scare people in a comic because, like he said, you can just page ahead and you can see what's going on. Plus, you've got a whole panel that you can scan with your eyes before you see what's coming. What I think the terror comes from in a horror comic is putting yourself in place of the character and not wanting to experience what that person is going to experience. So let me think of an example. Let me take Dean Koontz. Dean Koontz is a good example. It comes to mind. I'm a big Dean Koontz fan. I'm not a Stephen King guy. I've always was a Dean Koontz guy. But he's got great internal monologues about what a character's feeling when they're doing something. And so, for example, in the novel Watchers, I don't know if you guys ever read that.
Yes, I was just about to say that, dude.
Okay.
Yes.
In the beginning of that book, when he's out in the woods, the main character, and he finds the dog. Yeah. And then just to kind of tell everybody what this is about, it's about a creature that was made in an American biolab, and it's psychically linked to a dog, and it's following it and killing everybody that it comes in contact with because it wants to kill a dog. So the book starts with the main character finding the dog, and the rest of the book is sort of his friendship with this dog, protecting it from this monster that's pursuing it. Yeah. But when he finds the dog in the woods, and there's no visuals as to what the fear is, he's just observing the dog and how funny it's acting. But then he describes this feeling in the back of the neck of the main character as it takes place in the middle of the day, and he's looking down in the path, but there's something waiting to ambush him down there. He doesn't see anything. He just has a feeling. And I swear, when I was reading that, my heart started pumping because I was imagining myself in that position, not seeing anything, not hearing anything, but being made skeptical by the behavior of this animal. Like, okay, what's going on here? And then this dread telling me don't go down there, and then running the other way. Now, he didn't see anything, right? Nothing was shown. It was his instinct talking. Right. And I'm bringing this example because this is what you have to do in writing.
Yeah.
You have to kind of ride through the inner monologue of the character to talk to your audience and tell them what to feel. And that's something that you don't have to do in movies, or in anime, because you've got that going.
So to be fair, Berserk is a manga as well, and so it's done that's the whole thing. It is a comic, that has been established. Yes, it's been shown in the anime, but the big thing that makes Berserk what it is the comic, because of Miura's writing and Miura's art and design, and how he establishes these things on a page. And so I probably should have used that to describe it rather than its adaptation, because the adaptations for Berserk have never lived up to what has been done in
no way.
And a lot of that has to do with how Miura's art is.
Before we get too far, Dave, did you say that you needed to go?
I do have to go. I just want to make one recommendation. Has anybody ever read anything by F. Paul Wilson?
Yeah, I'm
huge fan.
Hey,
Repairman Jack is good when you get one of the good horror novels, because there you go. Yeah.
There it is.
You get one of the Repairman, you get those, and what's really good about them is Repairman Jack, he has those superpowers. Basically regular guy who's really smart, and he solves people's little problems. But when you get it, but there's the real supernatural element that he always gets into, and it's always some kind of weird demon-y thing.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that is an awesome set.
That is.
That is the adversary cycle, my friend.
Yes, and that's always some kind of supernatural thing that's usually really scary.
My language.
And that's the thing about him. The thing about those books is, like I said, he's just basically regular guy. He doesn't have superpowers. He's not he's an everyman. Yeah, he's everyman, but he thinks his way through all the people will come to him because their landlord is skimping on the rent or whatever, is going to kick him out. And for that reason, that gets into the supernatural thing, and it's always really cool and scary. I just wanted to let that one go. I got to go. Thank you guys for having me on.
Peace out, Indie Dave.
To go back, Oddity. That is Dave's book. It is amazing.
Yes. Oddity Madness in the Marsh. Indiegogo, $15 right now.
Hell yeah.
That's
a bargain, folks. Get down on it.
All right. Y'all take it easy. I got to go.
F. Paul Wilson's world in general is amazing. Just the interconnectedness of all of his books and his world is something to really marvel at.
It's interesting. Take care, Dave. It's interesting that F. Paul Wilson just came up, because I actually, how there are certain
Hey, Frankie.
What's up, Frankie?
Hey, what's up, guys?
What up?
And and congratulations on Through the Woods approaching 35K, by the way.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
And this actually is one of my favorite horror novels ever written.
Oh, me too.
The Keep is amazing.
You know what's great about The Keep? What's brilliant about The Keep is he meticulously goes and he takes every old gothic horror cliche and he makes it scary again.
Oh, I'll say this about F. Paul Wilson. Sorry, I'm going off on this.
I love him too.
He's a master at misdirection.
Yep.
Like he's a master of giving you two plots where you think, oh, this is the plot, and then it suddenly does a 180, and you're like, well, okay, it's a wholly different thing now, and it could have been, and it's a perfectly fine plot, but then it completely changes halfway through. I mean, the guy's a master plotter.
He is. Interesting thing about him too. Do you know what he does for a living? He's a doctor. And he just writes these incredible horror novels. The Adversary Cycle is fantastic. I actually finally finished. What's the last book? Night World.
Well, he just did another Repairman Jack book just came out.
I saw the Repairman Jack in previews, and I almost ordered it, but I had no idea about the writer, so I didn't.
No,
I'll have to check it out.
He's incredible.
Get this too, Luke, as well. Get The Keep from IDW.
Okay.
Yeah, I just put him on my list. I'm gonna be.
Like, The Keep is one of the best horror
Start
novels
there.
that came out of the 80s, period.
I agree. I totally agree. I think it's a classic.
And he wrote this for IDW as an adaptation because they butchered it as a movie. So
the movie is a mess. The movie's a mess.
They usually are.
I mean that one in particular.
Michael Mann directed it, dude.
I know, and he is the reason why it has remained buried. It's very difficult to. That movie was impossible to find on DVD or Blu-ray for like the longest time.
I have a torrented copy of it.
Yes, yeah, me too.
Mann,
and it's a good movie.
He's what?
Is that Michael Mann from Miami Vice?
Yeah, Michael Mann directed a horror film.
Yeah, called The Keep. Yeah,
and
if you watch it just as itself, if you watch it just as like something that's not related to the novel, it's still a bit of a disjointed mess, right? It still feels like there was something fucked up in the editing process or something, right? But it still has remarkable, terrific imagery, great score by Tangerine Dream. I think Scott Glenn is a terrific Glaken. But yeah, there are certain things that don't quite gel. But
Rassilon looks like Darth Vader and the Hulk had a love child.
Yeah, he does. Yeah,
looks like a golem, basically.
Yeah.
Good Lord. All right.
And also, you don't have that wonderful moment in the novel where suddenly he brings all of the dead Einsatzgruppen.
Yeah,
back to life.
That's my favorite scene in the book.
Mine too. Ending. It's because you know where he took that from. I guarantee you, he took that from the ending of Horror Express. Have you all seen Horror Express?
Nope.
No, I have not.
It is on YouTube. It is in the public domain. You can watch a 4K Blu-ray rip for free. It's an absolutely incredible Italian-Spanish co-production.
Cooler Rassilon.
Ooh, nice. Yeah, Rassilon is supposed to be like a Tothomon, basically.
Excuse me, Molasar in the Keep. Sorry.
Yes.
So
yeah, but anyway, there's a wonderful moment in Horror Express where oh god, I don't want to give it away. Just go watch Horror Express. It's free on YouTube.
You guys seen Midnight Meat Train?
Oh yes,
very good.
I want to get into that.
Surprise.
By the way.
Clive Barker. I love Clive Barker's show.
Before we go into that, though, I want to add the Dread thing that comes up with F. Paul Wilson because he has an interesting take on H.P. Lovecraftian cosmology.
Yeah, he does.
Whereas you've got these two cosmic forces, which is the otherness and the ally. But what's interesting about it is that the ally doesn't necessarily care about human beings or the universe. It just kind of wants to win. And
it just wants to cock block the adversary.
Yeah, it literally all it wants to do is exactly what he just said. It wants to cock block the evil one, and the evil one wants to devour you, but the other one's like, well, if it's too much trouble, I'm going to go to another galaxy and fight him there.
Right.
Exactly.
We're just basically marbles that they're playing with.
Exactly. So yeah, definitely an author that's well worth.
He's very, very libertarian in terms of his worldview. It's like it permeates the books, his libertarianness.
What about the movie Jacob's Ladder? The original.
Couldn't stand it.
I like that.
Really?
Yeah, hated it.
Man, I love how fucking cerebral it is. It gets into the back of your head and it just kind of crawls over all these different fears. It's great.
But I want to ask you something, Luke, because you were about to get into it. Because another one of the great things that come out of the 80s was the Books of Blood.
Oh,
The Books of Blood are, to me, one of the most influential bits of horror literature to come in the last 40 years.
Absolutely.
There'd never been anything quite like that before.
No,
Barker was a very fresh voice.
I mean, Shay, those scripts I'm sending you are basically jocks off of the Books of Blood. They come directly from there. Like,
really,
just the imagination that went into those. But what I got to ask though is that, what is it about Clive Barker's creation? What is it about Pinhead? What is it about the Cenobites that is very unsettling? Not just as like a horror icon, but what is it about what they do that's so extremely unsettling?
Because it's body dysmorphic horror. It's rending flesh. It's torture. It's, you know, the sick, dark underbelly. It's the almost nasty, dirty, sexy aspect of horror that nobody wants to talk about. You know, that dark, dirty lizard brain shit that Clive Barker seems to be the only person that he is able to get into. You know what I mean?
Well, that's
what it is.
That's because he is somebody that's very much in touch with his Jungian dark side. Or his shadow self, Jung used to call it.
Rawhead
right?
Rex and the other one. I can't remember the other one.
Rawhead Rex.
Rawhead Rex is such a
which were the
raw
two
book.
movies.
God.
It's an awesome short story, but a terrible movie.
It is.
Oh, yeah. Short story's great. Movie is awful.
But I can't remember what the other one was. He did 2 adaptations prior to Hellraiser. One was Rawhead, and the other one was... What was it?
Well, he did Cabal as Nightbreed.
That comes, that's the second movie.
I still love that Nightbreed movie, as cheesy as it is.
It's better now that it's restored, because the main problem I had with the theatrical version when it came out was it felt like it had been rushed in the editing. It just felt disjointed. It didn't feel like a movie. It felt like a trailer for a movie.
So I want to ask you guys something interesting, because this is something I'm always asking myself, is how much either the philosopher, the historian, the doctor, the writer is putting themselves in the work. When we're looking at pretty much arguably a genius as Clive Barker, how much do you think of his own, for example, his homosexuality is in those books?
A lot.
And where do you see it?
You see it in his very, very sensual, detailed description of male genitals.
Do you think there's anything in there?
Besides the obvious
wardrobe.
bit. Jesus.
Leather wardrobe. Leather. Lots of leather.
Lots of
That's not
leather.
exclusively a gay thing.
Very, very fetishistic, right? I mean,
Again,
what
not
does the
exclusively a
Cenobites
gay
look like?
thing.
No, not at all.
They're BDSM. Yeah.
But they're BDSM in a really dark sense. I mean,
Body dysmorphic horror.
Yeah, I mean, I dated somebody that was in the BDSM scene, and I got to see some of that, and I saw that it had a light side, right? Basically, a bunch of grown-ups playing with their toys and having fun, and of course, it has a very dark and it has a very sinister side too, and which I didn't see. Thankfully, but I know that it exists, and I know that many of us have a fiendish, self-destructive side. I know I do. You know, I trace that.
You leave my whiskey addiction out of this.
My safe word is Pinhead. My safe word is Pinhead.
I mean, he described, I believe, Rawhead Rex the monster as a walking dick. I think
basically, yeah.
He likes to piss on priests, and while he's like walking around, your house looking for you so he can snack on you. He's masturbating. A lot of dark sexuality in the Books of Blood. Also in his plays, if you've read.
And I don't think he could have written those books if he was a straight man. I don't think he could have.
I don't think so. I don't think so either. And I think that's one of the reasons that those stories are so fresh and very, very original. I mean, let's face it, it's one of the reasons why I love international cinema, international comic books, international fiction, is the fact that you get different flavors. You get different, get people from different backgrounds. Hopefully you're going to get, look, like if you look at Japanese folklore, right? Horror folklore, ghost stories. It's 100% different from Western.
For real, though.
Yeah, they've got a demon that's got an eyeball in its asshole.
The yokai?
Those
Japanese ghosts, specters, yokai is what they
or oni.
Oni were those are the Japanese demons, but Japanese horror and ghost stories, specters, all that stuff. Lafcadio Hearn. You got it. Lafcadio Hearn. He was oddly enough, the way most of the world became acquainted with Japanese folklore and ghost stories and horror was through a British author named Lafcadio Hearn, who had lived in Japan, collected these stories, and then released them in translated versions. Quite On is an absolutely astounding Japanese horror film that adapts a lot of these stories. But if you look at the yokai, they're from outer space. You're just like, I mean, they're 100%, 180 degree, 160, a complete turnaround from what you would find in Western horror. These are complete. There's a movie that's on Netflix called Gantz Zero, which is animated, computer animated.
Yeah, good stuff.
It has some absolutely astounding horror imagery in it. Though, because the monsters in that, even if they're not actual yokai, they look like yokai. So you have like these giant heads that are in like burning wheels that are going through the streets. They're very surreal, and I think that's what makes Japanese monsters and demons and the yokai, as they call them, so terrifying. Is they're so surreal and dreamlike.
Well, so to kind of go into that a little bit, like I had said, I don't even know how many times. Junji Ito, the book that I've been reading recently. You have what seems like a very sweet young girl, who's teenage, pretty, whatever, and in the very beginning of the book, you hear that she basically is brutally murdered, chopped into, I want to say it was like 12 different pieces because there were 12 students. And everybody was responsible for getting rid of part of her body. That was kind of the idea. And the reason they killed her is because she fell off of a ledge and hit the ground, and they thought she was dead. And as they started hacking her to pieces, she woke up and screamed. So they were like, well, we've come this far, we got to kill her now. So then they killed her, and then they got rid of parts of her body.
Jesus, you don't try to wake somebody up before you try to hack them up? Good Lord.
Oh, no, they did. They tried extensively. She didn't respond to anything. The more interesting part is as the professor, and all of this happens within the first couple of pages, as the professor is kind of talking to the students and saying, hey, I know it's really difficult. We all had a really hard time with her dying, blah, blah, blah. She walks back through the door. So keep in mind, there were how many students, and all of them got rid of part of her in their own way, in their own location, and somehow she came back together. So basically what ends up happening is you start to realize that Tomie is absolutely not at all a little schoolgirl who was brutally murdered. Tomie is like this thought of what would be just a terrifying creature, and she starts showing up all over the place. She's always weird. Everyone who comes in contact with her loses their mind if they survive. And that's
a little bit like They Come Back, or Sometimes They Come Back.
Kind of. So, and you never really get to know what she is, but to not to give away too many, because Tomie has a whole bunch of different stories within it. There's one part where somebody ends up with she's got like this life-threatening disease. She needs a kidney. This is everything that's going to happen. She's about to die, and they end up getting a person who has recently died, and it turns out that it's Tomie. And so they take the liver from her and they put it in this other girl. This other girl starts to turn into Tomie. The liver mutates. They had to take it out of her. When they take it out of her and they kept it in an incubator, it grew a head.
Oh.
So they chopped the head off of it and they put them in two separate tanks.
Oh.
And the head grew a body, and the liver kept growing a head and arms and legs. So basically, the more you divide her, the more powerful she becomes.
Like the
fire, fire.
It's like
that is
Hydra.
actually one person's solution. They kill one of the Tomies with fire, I think.
Hydrochloric acid bath. I know that that's a,
You
not only is that a,
this is when we were talking about fear and things that divert from the norm and from what we know.
This is that. I don't know that hydrochloric acid is going to do anything to her. In fact, I believe that they tried something, and they tried radiation because they were thinking it was cancer, right? They were thinking it was basically a giant tumor that was mutating. So they hit it with radiation, and it accelerated her process.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Like, yeah, that's a big fat.
You know what? A recent film that I thought was absolutely fantastic was It Follows. And that has a very interesting, very uncanny, almost Japanese-style monster because it always looks like somebody else.
I think that one of the greatest, speaking of Japanese, one of the greatest things that I think about how they handle writing is I feel that you could look at a good chunk of anything that you have, like any manga that's been done, what have you, in the past few years, and you will find elements of horror in it. Like they use horror as a way to really build suspense and really in these scenarios. I think, like, My Hero Academia, not this in a while ago had the big encounter between All Might and All for One, and that shit is Superman versus Doomsday times 11. And the big reason for it is because they use, like I mentioned, that one of the big key aspects of horror is obviously how your characters react to a situation, and your first encounter with All for One is seeing these students who are very, very powerful watch this guy just tear through the top 6 heroes like they're butter, and you've had buildup throughout the entire series of All Might, the guy who is the most powerful person in the world, is horrified of this person. It gives him goosebumps, and he has a whole speech that he gives Midoriya in their first talk, where it's there is a lot of fear behind the smile, and it's all directed towards this guy. And so then when All for One shows up and you have this showdown between it, it's you took Doomsday and gave him the mind of Lex Luthor, and then you have him just go ape shit, and it's horrifying. It doesn't stop being really a horror segment until All Might decides that he's going to really use the rest of his power, and he starts getting cheered on by the crowd. Then it takes the turn into a superhero book, right? Mm-hmm. But up until that moment, All for One is freaking creaming him, and it's scary. Mm-hmm. And the way that All for One's designed, he's his arms are going massive and there's spikes going out of it, and he looks like a horror movie monster. And I think that's one of the big things that the Japanese have done really well, because you look at these projects and they take elements from horror to make these situations more poignant.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point. Shay, before you were talking about, I think, how to bring the horror home, how to make it something that you can identify with. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming that, I'm hoping that most of you have seen Profondo Rosso, also known as Deep Red, by
Dario Argento.
Dario Argento, right? Because I just wanted to get this point in here, because I know Shay is looking for pointers. Dardano Sacchetti is the guy who wrote that and wrote a buttload of Italian horror movies. I mean, his listing on the IMDb is pretty insane, right? The kills in that are very, very painful to watch. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Is that by Blackest Heart Media? Oh no, that's the Arrow. Oh, is it the Blu-ray? Yep. Oh, you lucky MFer, man. That's Suspiria Blu-ray, by the way. I'm sorry?
That's the limited edition one. That's got soundtrack.
Oh, look at you.
Oh, got to see Goblin live, by the way, New York City a couple of years ago. That was fucking sweet.
Oh, before we get into too much more, Odin, did you say that you needed to go?
Yeah, I've got some stuff going on in the background here, unfortunately. So, thanks for having me on, guys. Elysian Fields, 5 days left, and help us hit that 7K.
See you soon, sir.
Thank you.
Hello,
for
Odin.
coming by.
Good seeing you, brother.
Good seeing you guys. Good meeting you, Brian, and good seeing everyone again.
Bye. All right. Sorry.
Great points, man.
Trying to make sure I'm keeping up on the private chat, so when we have people that need to dip out, they're not stuck here for another 20 minutes while we go off on 500 other tangents.
But yeah, no, it's something I did want to mention to you because I found it very interesting and very useful. All of the kills in that he tried to make relatable, right? So most of us don't know what it's like to have our heads cut off. Most of us don't know what it's like to be. Yeah, most of us theoretically don't know what it's like to get blasted with a shotgun, stabbed with a butcher knife, et cetera, et cetera. So, he tried to make everything like there's a scene where the killer grabs one of the victims by the head and starts banging his I think like the top of his teeth right into like a sharp corner of like a mantle, right? Like boom, 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 right? And he says he got the inspiration from that okay, well, what really hurts? What I know really hurts that we've all experienced. Ever banged your elbow on a sharp table corner? Ever banged your shins? And that's how he worked out all of the murders in that. It's all stuff that you can relate to, but blown up.
They make you cross your legs or something.
Right. It's like all of us have been burned a little bit. Well, how about being drowned in boiling water? So it's I think when we're looking for things to scare people, obviously the ultimate goal is dread. But at the same time, if it's not a bad thing to terrorize your audience or your reader a little bit.
You can't invoke dread if you're talking about something that isn't even remotely fathomable to a person, because that is the same thing as saying, like, I'm going to tell you a horror story and I'm going to speak the entire time in Chinese when you don't speak any Chinese at all and you know nothing. Like, it's not going to register. You need somebody who's, when we're talking about the existential stuff, you need something that's going to at least somewhat be like a thought that has run through everybody's mind at some point. Like, what if I'm not real? What if there's more to this world than what I think? And that's what you play on. So it's not that they have to, obviously you don't have to have like an out-of-body experience or have a run-in with a demon, but having an understanding in some sense that there might be something bigger than you is something that I think that really is necessary for that fear to kind of set in.
Well, I think that's why
something
demons
you can't control, something that's out of your purview, something that you can't do anything with.
We're skirting something now that Brian almost got into, but he didn't quite go into, and I'm sure he's thinking about it.
Please, sir.
Which is, there's two things we could talk about. There's the existential, which is what you don't know. It's the ghost fear,
right?
Or there's a genre that works really well visually, and it works really well in prose, which is body horror.
Cronenberg.
Exactly, which is, you can describe that inside of a body because you're living in your body, and everybody can relate to what you're thinking, and your internal monologue is you're like, what is going on within me? But it's also a very visual thing, because if something's happening to the body, you can outwardly see it. Like, for example, Jeff Goldblum in The Fly slowly deteriorating.
His masterpiece, really.
And that movie works on many levels. It could be a novel, it could be a movie, because what it really is about somebody dreading someone dying from cancer, that you love.
But also the loss of self, right? Like, to me, the most poignant moment in that movie, and that's what's so strong about it, is that it's a kick-ass horror movie, but, Cronenberg is always accused of being very cold. His films are accused of being cold, but they're not. They're hot. It's the world that they take place in that's freezing cold. But the emotion in his work is very, very warm, I think. And there's this incredible scene, and the scene I'm talking about, where Jeff Goldblum's character, Seth Brundle, is talking to Gina Davis's character about insect politics. right?
Oh,
But she wants
an immensely chilling dialogue.
It is, but it's also really deeply moving.
And
right?
but chilling at the same time.
And chilling at the same time. That's what I'm talking about. This is something that you can only do in horror. There are certain genres you can only do in certain things you can only do in certain genres, certain mediums, etc. The one thing that you can only do in horror is a sense of dread and pathos at the same time. And that's a scene. I don't know if you've seen it, Shay. But
have you seen The Fly, Shay?
Okay.
Oh, put it very high on the top of your list. First of all, watch all David Cronenberg. Okay?
The original's not bad, but the remake that Cronenberg did
so
is
much better.
Very much transcends.
Plus Jeff Goldblum.
The genre. It's very much a bit of it's like it becomes literature in a way.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, very much so. And the insect politics scene where he says, like, well, you know about insect politics, right? No. Well, that's because they don't have any. And what I'm trying to tell you is that if you stay here, I'm gonna hurt you.
No, you left out the best line.
Yeah.
Which when he says, I'm an insect who dreamed he was a man.
Yeah.
And loved it, but now the insect is awake. The man is, and that's the scary part because one of two things: it's existential dread. I am not what I thought I was.
Yeah.
I'm just a mindless machine, and that mindless machine is going to, against my will, hurt the one I love.
Yes. Yeah.
That's creepy.
Yeah, and powerful. Yeah, and gut wrenching. I'm thinking about other scenes that are like that. Once again, that you can only get in a horror film.
But that works both in film and literature
and literature too. And literature too. I love referencing fiction, but let's face it, more people have seen films than they have seen novels, right? For instance, not that many of us are. They're more accessible, right? So it's easier to give as examples, right?
I'm just going back to the topic.
Oh, sure.
And pinning it on there.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well,
Shay?
sorry to kind of derail a little bit. So Frankie posted this. This is actually something that I think is really, really interesting, because and it does kind of go into a lot of movies that we see. What do you feel is the scarier way to do storytelling? Having something happen first person perspective or having it happen third? Because most horror movies, it's usually a third person perspective. You're watching it from somebody else's viewpoint. It's very rare that you have, with the exception of found footage, it's very rare that you have a first person view of something going on in horror.
Oh, yeah.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, right, we have Hitchcock's definition of suspense, right? Suspense is where two people are talking and there's a bomb underneath the table and you know it's there, but they don't know it's there. Yeah. Now, you can't do that from a first-person perspective, right? And yet, of course, with the first-person's perspective, what are you doing? You're being immersed into the story from the point of view of the person that's experiencing it. But then you have Poe, right? Where it's it's told in the first person, but you have the unreliable narrator, right? The classic, of course. I think somebody in the chat mentioned it. The Telltale Heart.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, thank you, Frankie. Right? Which is...
Frankie's got all the good ones.
Oh, my God. And it's one of those stories you can sit down and read out loud to yourself. And, of course, he starts out telling you how sane he is. Look at me. Look at how composed I am. Now, I'm going to explain things to you. And by the time you get to the end of the story, he's frothing at the mouth.
And your own heart's beating. Your own heart's Exactly.
Have you guys ever read Mr. B Gone, Clive Barker again?
No.
Is that in the book?
It is much the same way. It starts out, it's a demon trapped in a book. You must burn this book. Listen to me. Put me out of my misery. I have an audio version of it read by the original Pinhead.
Oh, Doug Bradley.
Yeah, Doug Bradley reading Mr. B Gone.
Doug Bradley.
Yeah. Wow. It's a demon basically trying to get released from the book, and he's getting more. By the time you get to the end of it, if you don't burn the book, he doesn't get set free. You know, it's a great book. It's a good read.
Is that a short story or is that a novel?
It's a novelette.
Novella? Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, novella. Yeah.
Hey, Luke, I got a question for you. Luke, do you know about Dave Mustaine's fear of singing The Conjuring with the original lyrics? Have you heard about that?
No.
Dave Mustaine from Megadeth.
Yeah.
I recently heard there are 2 versions of that song.
Okay.
He refuses to sing the original because it's actually like, it's teaching people how to put curses out. And he had an incident. So he did it on tour again, but he changed the lyrics to take that recipe out because he said he dabbled in that shit. And boy, stuff started happening and it freaked him the hell out. And he tells people to stay the hell away from that shit.
I do not. I'm somebody who has like a pretty good occult library, and you will never catch me playing with tarot cards. You'll never catch me. I do not have a Ouija board in the house. It is something I respect the way you respect a 12-gauge shotgun or a case of dynamite, baby.
I got tarot cards in my house.
I got my original translation of the Hebrew Bible, and there's Elohim, and I know they're there. So there are unseen entities that
I believe
God made judgment over. Well, they're in there. It's Elohim.
I've got cards. I've got runes.
Has anyone ever experienced any supernatural stuff or no? In their lives?
I live in the nation's oldest city, man. Some vile shit has happened in this town. There's haunted shit all over this city. Yes.
What, St. Augustine?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know about that.
Yep.
But have you?
Where are you at, Luke?
Nation's oldest city, St. Augustine, Florida.
St. Augustine.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a lot of vile shit has happened on these grounds down here.
Bones buried. They got bones and skeletons buried under so many places.
Mm-hmm.
And every time they do construction, they have to get permission to relocate the skeletons.
I grew up working on St. George Street. I would look out the back door and see the fort.
Wow, I've never been there, but I know about it. Oh, man.
It's a historian's wet dream down here. Oh yeah, our matey, Saint Augustine. Yeah,
I've never personally had an experience with the supernatural. I have never seen a ghost. I absolutely believe in ghosts because I know too damn many people who have seen them.
I have
too many. I've
seen something. All right, this is weird. We moved from Astoria, Queens to Middle Village, and it was an old house. They said it was haunted, but I didn't know about that because I was young. 5 years old. I'm up in the attic because we needed a floor there, and I'm watching TV. I had a little pop-up television set, a little Panasonic, and a Sesame Street book. I remember it like yesterday, and I had this feeling to get up and run to the window. I don't know why. I just had this feeling to go look. This is the 3rd floor. I look out the window, and in the distance, it's clear blue sky, no clouds, no nothing. It's sunny out. So, I'm looking out the window, and I see these 2 dark specks in the sky, far out, like way far. And basically, like every time I blink, they'd get closer, bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where they'd have to be what? Basically, with 2 giant eyeballs right there outside my window. Like, they had to be 10 feet long, each eyeball. And it looked like it was hand-drawn in pencil. Like, they were just staring at me, scared their shit out of me. I'm just standing like, what the hell am I looking at? I couldn't figure out what the hell this was. I'm like, is it cloud? It couldn't be clouds because I saw it. And it's just staring at me. They weren't friendly eyes. They weren't scary eyes. They were just stern looking, just the eyebrows to the eyes. That's it. I'm like, what? I flipped out. I run downstairs.
Go watch Doom Patrol. Go watch the first season of Doom Patrol. That's all I'm going to say.
It's awesome.
I run. I call my mother. I'm like, there's eyes in this. What are you talking about? I didn't have a fever, nothing. We go upstairs. She looks at the window. We went through every window. She took me out on both balconies. Clear sky. They're gone. I don't know what the hell that shit was. It happened once. Scared the hell out of me, and that's the last time I've seen any kind of apparition or anything like that since I lived there for like 15 years. But that was an experience, and I still can't explain what the hell it was.
Right.
I'm like, did I see my own eye reflections in the window? I'm like, no, because the sun wasn't there. I saw this thing, and it was just going boom, boom, boom,
And
boom, boom.
it wasn't malignant. It didn't. You didn't have a feeling of malignance from it, or
I was confused. I got scared afterwards when I got a good look at it, but it just, I froze. I was trying to figure out, what is this? I wasn't scared at first. Then after the fact, I'm like, what the hell is this? And that's when I just ran.
And how old were you?
5. Like 4
so
or 5
you
years
didn't
old.
have an idea of what the rules of the world were quite yet.
No,
I suppose that rules my theory of hallucinogenic.
It started with a feeling to get up and look out the window.
Right.
Like
so you felt something first.
Yeah, it was weird. I had a feeling. I remember. I had a feeling like to get up and go look. I'm like, why do I have to go look out the window? I'm watching cartoons. I'm reading my freaking Sesame Street book. What the hell do I have to get up for? I looked and I'm like, what am I looking at? And then bang, 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 bang. They're like right there, just staring at me. But
so that kind of stuff is really interesting to me. I've had a couple of very weird, unexplainable events happen. There's 2 that are really good. One is a super quick one, and one is one that I'm very skeptical about. But I remember when way before, so it was before I joined the military, when I was living with my at the time boyfriend, and we were asleep, and he started having a nightmare. And normally he doesn't have these kinds of nightmares, but he started having a nightmare. I bolted up because I heard him. He sounded like he was gasping for air. And so I bolted up to try and wake him up. And the second I touched him, he took a breath. The thing that was weird is when I woke up, normally if somebody next to you is gasping, you wake up and you turn, right? So I woke up and I went to turn and I stopped about halfway because there was a corner of our bedroom, and it was like light was being sucked into it. It was darker than everything else in the room. There was no, despite having moonlight come through, it was not permeating that corner for whatever reason. So I woke him up like this. So I was, for whatever reason, and it wasn't even a conscious thing, I could not bring myself to physically move my head from that corner. And so I was like, hey, are you okay? And I'm staring off in this corner. And he was like, so yeah, I was just having a really, really hard time breathing. And I was like, real quick, does that corner look weird to you? And he was like, what are you talking about? And so I turned to him and I was like, the corner right over here. And when I looked back, all of that darkness was gone. The moonlight was hitting. I could see it perfectly every single corner. And I was like, you could not see there. And he went, oh my gosh, you saw it too. And I was like, the fuck did you just say to me? Like, I thought I was talking.
You saw it too. What do you mean it? What
yeah,
it?
So when I had asked him, I had asked him like, what did you see? And he goes, I don't know. I just got a bad feeling from that part of the room. And he's like, and I guess my eyes couldn't focus. And I was like, no, light refused to hit it. And I was like, I woke up and I could see clearly. And he said, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard of, have you heard of the demon that is supposed to, like at night, he sits on your chest? And it's where sleep paralysis came from?
Yeah, the
old yeah. There's that very famous painting.
I've had that.
So he doesn't normally suffer from sleep paralysis. He told me that the reason he was gasping for air is he felt his lungs compressed and he could not take a full breath in. And it felt like there was some very, very heavy stone sitting on his chest. I was like, kid, will you please sleep with all the lights on? Like, I'm like, you're no longer, I'm not going back to bed. Like,
here's my question.
Here's validation.
That's happened to me a couple times.
Oh, it's horrifying.
Has it really?
Yeah.
And because my question is to Shay, did this ever happen again?
Not in that same way. So I've also been
related to the place So I mean, 'cause that's the thing about ghosts, right? Most of the ghost stories that I've heard, this is the ghost stories. I don't mean ghost stories. I mean accounts, like people have told me
right,
of their experiences. Because when you let people know that you're open to the idea, you'll start hearing these stories, and then you start to realize, oh my God, this is a big secret that nobody talks about because they're afraid that people are either going to accuse them of being lunatics or of being liars. So
Hey, I was
everybody, so everybody keeps.
Yeah, but see, Frankie, because you were 5, you're obviously just a child with an overactive imagination, is what I guarantee almost everyone told that to in this set.
That's one thing that pissed me off. You got validation. I didn't get validation from mine.
Right.
I ran when the eyes were still there. I wanted my mother to see this too, and it was gone, and it pissed me off. I was frustrated.
My validation came from somebody who's like very logical and basically was like, well, technically, I mean, it could have been, and they started like systematically trying to destroy it. And I was like, do you realize all the hoops you had to jump through in order to say that this wasn't some kind of a demonic whatever?
It's a fucking demon. It's a fucking demon. It's the same thing. Like there's that wonderful part in The Exorcist, right? Where these scientists are running all these tests on Reagan, and there's only one possible explanation, and they can't bring themselves to say it, but they take a little piece of paper basically and go, well, you know, you might want to check this guy out. You might want to give this guy a call, but they refuse. Their logical minds. And that's the thing about the supernatural. I don't believe in the supernatural. I believe that what we think of as the supernatural is natural, but we haven't figured out what it is yet.
Well,
we haven't defined it yet.
Well, Brian, it's funny that you would say that, because look at the word, right? Like, we understand natural as behaving in a certain way by a series of natural laws. Supernatural is merely, it's not behaving paranormally, it's behaving in a way we haven't seen it behave before. And it's confounding our categories. So that's
right. Yeah, there it is.
I always felt supernatural meant beyond our nature. You know, beyond our ken of
supernatural
nature.
is something behaving in a supernatural that we think is a natural way. Paranormal is what you're talking about.
Right.
I will be right back. My dog is destroying stuff. I need to go let her out.
What's interesting when you hear about miracles in the Bible, everybody's like, whoa, like what makes a miracle is that something has entered into nature and made it behave in a way that we haven't witnessed it behaving prior.
Right.
That's what makes it a miracle. You're like, because if it's not, if it's a person.
Did Jesus walk on water, or was there a sandbar 2 feet below?
Well, don't forget that when Jesus walked on water, he wasn't like, hey everybody, check out how awesome I am. I can walk on water. Dig it, bitches. No, he reached out his hand to the apostles. It was like, hey man, you can do this too.
Yeah.
You can do this too. Come out on the water with me, man. Right? And, you know, let's face it. We have the power of the human mind over the body. It's so incredibly astounding. We've all heard the stories of women, little petite women whose children are pinned under cars, and next thing you know, they're hulking out, and boom, they move that fucking car, right? We know that when you hypnotize somebody and you tell them, like, oh, I'm like burning you with a cigarette, and you take a pen and you just touch them, that place where you touch them, they'll get a blister. There are these ceremonies in India, these street ceremonies, where people put themselves into trances and run skewers through their skin, through their cheeks, through their arms, and they don't bleed. Right? So we already know that what percentage of the human mind do we use? Very, very little.
That was that the whole 10% of the human mind that was debunked.
Oh, was it really? Was it really?
That was debunked. Yeah. No.
At any point you're using different parts of your brain.
Yeah. You use 100% of your brain.
Gotcha.
It's just we have untapped potential because of what, you know. I mean, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, I have it as my screensaver here. All things are possible. Who you are is limited by who you think you are.
There it is. There it is. I'm reading a lot of that stuff right now for the Nine Devil thing I'm working on. Dusted off my copy of the Book of Enoch, the Apocrypha, the Book of Giants, Dead Sea Scrolls.
I love the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Love the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Because now you can get a lot of translations on them. But
yep. The Penguin is what I got.
We can go something very basic. We can go back to the resurrection of Christ, right?
Yes.
Our categories tell us that there's a corruption in human beings, which in all things that they wind down to zero and they die. We call it death, or it's just changing into another state. We don't know. But what we witnessed in Christ was the source of all life doing the opposite, which is resurrecting the dead, right? Yeah. So it's a miracle because we've never observed that happen.
Right.
He's acting in a supernatural manner because he's the source of all life, blowing away death. Essentially, that's how he's essentially redeeming mankind. Death comes for the guy he thinks is just another pickin', and it's the source of life and blows him away. Right.
Yep. Showing power over death.
Yep.
Well, he is the source of all life. Death can't do anything to it.
Exactly.
By the way, I hate to interrupt, but Luke, your buddy is like ridiculously cute.
Yeah,
this is Grace.
Who's that?
This is Grace.
Because she's actually all black, and I very rarely see an all black cat. They usually have some white or something.
She's my little house panther.
Oh, I got strong fifis watching you cuddle with her because my best buddy, my feline, better half, Figaro, Mr. Figs, Mr. Handsome, Mr. Sexy, as he was known, looked just like.
Now, if his name was Mr. Handsome, was he hunting predators?
No. He was the predator. He was the predator. And I just thought, man, I miss him so much.
And did those predators have wine coolers when he found them?
No, they did not have wine coolers. Definitely.
So,
this conversation has gotten completely out of control. You need to do some cat herding, madame.
Okay, well, Brian, I just want to say this. Why don't you have a seat over there real quick?
Okay.
Now we're going to look at the chat log.
There you go. I'm gonna mute myself and just look at that gorgeous kitty with his golden eyes.
Yeah, isn't she beautiful?
Oh, so pretty.
Yeah, I had to take in her and her sister Stitch when my dad got sick, and they've lived with me ever since. I now have 3 cats.
Oh, I got 0, and life sucks without them.
I got an old one, and I got a 3-legged one.
Oh, I love 3-legged cats. They get around fine. They don't bum out people do. They're not like, oh, I guess I can't. Ballroom dancing is out of the question now.
Yeah, she just retired as an indoor cat.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah.
So, one thing I was going to say. So I said I had the 2 stories, right?
Mm-hmm.
So granted, I have more than 2, but I had 2 that I was going to share. I had one where I went to, and you can go to the like ghost hunting tours and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to an abbey.
Come to St. Augustine.
Oh, I know. They got like a million of them. I've seen some on YouTube.
Hold up.
They got a million.
I went to one in England.
Ooh.
So I went to an abbey that was considered so haunted that they could reliably hold tours, and you were probably going to have something happen.
Now, granted, this is an entire company, and there are things that they obviously can do to make you think that you are experiencing some kind of supernatural whatever, right? Because they're controlling the area. The experience that I had was very, very, very difficult to try and explain how the fuck it could have happened. Okay, so we're going through this abbey. There's a whole bunch of creepy places, a whole bunch of creepy things going on. We get to a part where it's really, really high up in a tower, and this abbey is on a hill, so the road is probably 40 or 50 feet below it, right? So when we're talking like lights and stuff like that, headlights aren't going to hit through here. That's just not that's not a realistic thing. So we go into this area where you had to climb down a ladder to get into like a basement or a dungeon. It was really confusing what it was, but basically what they did is they filled it with sand, so it had it had this sand floor and everything, and this is where they basically kept prisoners of this manor, whatever. So we're down there, they're talking, they're giving us the spiel, whatever, and they start talking about how there is like a big kind of hulking 7-ish foot entity thing that hangs out down there. And they didn't mention it until the woman standing next to me, who at the time was my commander's wife, was like, why do I feel like there is a person standing right in front of me? And they went, oh, him. And I was like, interesting. Okay, so you're trying to set the mood and you're going after the tiny blonde girl who's obviously going to find something because she's special and has to have some experience. And basically she was like, I feel like something's trying to play with my hair and like something's standing really close to me. And they go, yeah, he really likes blondes. And I was like, this is funny. This is stupid, right? Well, the creepy part for me is standing right next to her. I end up standing there looking around in this very dark room. They've got candles and stuff lit so you can kind of see things. And I just start feeling what feels like somebody blowing little puffs of air directly into one of my eyes. Not both, not my whole face, one eyeball. And it didn't feel like it was somebody who was coming up. It felt like it was coming at a straight angle, which means that thing would have to have had a mouth at eye level for me, that's like a 6'8" type thing, right? So I was like, okay, that's kind of freaky. And I was like,
Can't be a draft.
I'm just not going to say anything.
It's a very specialized draft.
Right. I was like, that's super pointed. And like, I took a step to my left because I was like, maybe it is a draft. Step to my left, stop for half a second. And then I just start feeling, and I was like, okay, this really needs to fucking stop. Like, I'm not a fan and my eyes drown. I need you to stop this shit. And then they get to the point that they really wanted to talk about. Well, no, it was like I sat there and I was like, okay, all right. Like, I'm not going to be scared. I refuse to be scared. Damn it, I'm going to be brave. And
I would have had no shame. I would have been
no. Y'all, you need to cut this shit out and step to back up. All right.
So it gets better.
I will straight up talk to him like, step the fuck up.
They blew out all the candles. Okay.
Yeah.
And it got beyond pitch black in this area. Like, we're talking, you had a tiny bit of light from the moon that was coming through what is essentially an arrow slit window. And that was it. And so I'm looking out into this giant room and I was like, oh, this is really creepy. Like Mike was saying, you can't see your hand 2 inches in front of your face. And all of a sudden we start to see this little tiny ball of light. And you start to see it dart all along the floor. And the creepiest part is it in a room that dark, if somebody had like a laser pointer or something along those lines, you would see the trail, right? This was a concentrated tiny little ball of light. And it only lit up about a ½ inch around its circumference, the sand on the floor as it was going, right? It wasn't moving the sand. There were no tracks. I even, on my way out, kicked the shit out of that whole area because I was like, there has to be, like, they've got something underneath and it's a low level LED on some track, right? And so I'm sitting here kicking stuff around and like
healthy skepticism. I like it.
Yeah.
Right. As we're waiting to go, because we have to climb up this rickety ass ladder to get back out of this place. Like, you can't just leave. They threw people down this hole without a ladder, and it was like, you live here now. This is now your existence until you die.
Right.
So I'm seeing this thing going around. I'm like kicking the sand and everything, and I hear a girl behind me who's part of the whole crew, and and I was like, "What?" She goes, "Nothing. It's nice to see somebody who's trying to foul us up." And I was like, "Well, forgive me for not accepting things at face value." And then the older guy was like, "Hey, out of curiosity, did you happen to have any other experience? Because normally we have something else happen, and nobody said that it happened here. So I'm just curious." And he was like, "Because if you're looking around, it makes me wonder." And I went,
"Oh no."
Well, I did, like, because he heard me whispering to my husband at the time, and he's like, could you? I'm sorry. Could you just repeat that? And I was like, well, I kept feeling like there's a puff of air in my face. And he goes, oh, it did happen. Okay. Like we were kind of we're used to it happening, and it not happening was very odd. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? And he goes, well, so he likes short little blonde girls, and he's like, he's not a fan of the tall women. And I was like, okay.
No, like, get the fuck out of here.
He was like,
so he has an MO.
Yes. he doesn't, and it's not just tall women, like he doesn't like tall people. Like
because he himself was tall, and maybe, but now here I am trying to like psychoanalyze.
Yeah, like he wanted to be the only tall person or whatever. So like that whole thing happened. I climbed out, like up that ladder, got out, and I was like, so if I take all of the logic and everything that I tried to do to disprove this, right? And I'm like, okay, put that in a box. And then I take the feeling of everything that happened while I was there. And I was like something not cool was going on. And I don't think that the people were involved, because they genuinely seemed kind of like, man, we thought that maybe he had taken the night off for a change, but I guess not. And I was just like, did you ever like hurt anybody or like, I don't know, move that ladder while they're on it or anything? They were like, no, you should be fine. I was like, see, should. I don't like that word. I feel like that should be definitely, you'll be totally fine. Not like, you're probably going to be okay, but maybe get up the ladder quickly. Like,
so I don't know if I just read too much urban fantasy, like urban fantasy, but like, it sounds to me like they have a deal with him. Like he doesn't get shuffled off, to the next world, so he can kick around here as long as he does these things. He's got a contract to fulfill, and like the dungeon itself or the castle or whatever, it has a contract with him. So I mean, that's what it sounded like to me. So he's got to fulfill his duties, got to fulfill his MO, or in other words.
Well, what's really interesting?
Maybe 10 people.
Well, what's interesting is how ghosts always seem to operate on a kind of loop, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh
yeah. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with the stone tape theory. The stone tape theory is that there are certain places that can capture kind of, I don't know, psychic echoes.
Energy.
Right.
Energy.
Yes. Echoes.
Right? And so that what you're seeing isn't a soul. You're seeing like a kind of after image that people have left behind, right?
Yeah.
So, right. So, and then of course, there's the third possibility, which is that, the first possibility is that these are souls. The second possibility is the stone tape theory. And then there's the third possibility, which is that there could be both kinds. All I know is that the people that I've encountered who have had experiences with what we refer to casually as the supernatural and ghosts, they're always very matter of fact about it. They're always just very sort of blasé. Like, yeah, this is what happened. And I think it's because this is what I saw. And I think it's because they have to process it themselves. And then ultimately they come to the conclusion, yeah, I saw some shit. And I had
so many.
I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous because I'm waiting for that final confirmation, and I've never had it.
Well, people like you and me that are actually looking for it. Like I'm the type of weird fucker. If I see something like weird in the corner, I'll be ogling and be like, "What? What? Hey, come here! What? What are you?"
Yeah.
And then poof, gone. It's like, no, come on now. Like if you're looking for it, they're gonna run away. If they're gonna trip you out, then they coming for you. That's how it works.
Hey, Brian, Luke.
Yeah.
So Luke reminded me of this, but Brian will probably know what I'm talking about. And it's a kind of a good use of first and third person and unreliable narrators. But we're used to this template of ghosts as being these omniscient, clever entities, right? That they can't be tripped up, and we're sort of their prey, right? Well, there is a Clive Barker story, I don't know if you ever read, called The Yattering and Jack. Do you remember that one?
No.
It's in the Book of Blood. It's from the point of view of a haunting ghost. And the point is that the ghost has been assigned, not a ghost, but it's like I don't know what you call him, a specter, but he's been designed to drive this particular family and its descendants crazy. Otherwise, he gets shit on in hell or whatever the punishment is, and he has to do it by a certain deadline. And there's scenes in the book, in the short story, where he's getting yelled at by his demon boss saying, "You better get this done because you're under deadline, buddy." And so he's
I really don't remember that one. No.
So what's funny, what's hilarious is all from the demon's point of view, and he's like doing these very explicit things to get this guy's attention, and he seems to ignore him. So he's like, "I exploded his cat in the living room," and he just sort of walked right by it. I don't understand it. What's wrong with this guy? I got his, you know, he explains all this like heinous stuff he's doing. He's like, "What is this guy, autistic or something?" He's not. He's like totally ignoring the scary shit I'm doing to him. And you find out, like, because of the unreliable narrator and the dramatic irony of being with the ghost, that the guy knows his family's curse, and he's doing this whole thing to trick the demon to get him outside so he can kill him. Because if he steps outside the house, he becomes an entity, a flesh and blood entity, he can murder him.
Nice.
And it's a great use of
I would have remembered that one. I don't remember that one. That's awesome.
And it's hilarious.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
It's one of the very few Clive Barker.
You need to read Mr. Begone then. If you dig that type of story, you need to read.
Me of that.
Yeah, you need to read Mr. Begone.
Shay wants to say something.
I have to read both of these. These sound fantastic.
The Yattering and Jack actually made a comic adaptation of it.
Nice.
Have you read the Screw Tape Letters?
I was just about to say. I was just about to say the Screw Tape Letters.
Like, you start describing it, and I was like, hold on, what was
exactly. Well,
I have an audio version read by John Cleese.
I have one read by Mr. Turkis.
Barker was or is a very big C.S. Lewis fan. When he wrote that children's novel, The Thief of Always, which I think is fantastic, it would make an awesome animated film. And he mentioned
not an atheist. He's not. You can tell he's not.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. And you know, he's somebody who mentioned like that he's a C.S. Lewis fan, loves the Chronicles of Narnia and all that stuff. You know, except for, of course, you know, the bit with Santa Claus. What the fuck is Santa Claus doing in there? But yeah, no, absolutely, I agree with you that Barker must have you know, either he is a believer, or he is somebody that was just raised in the church and so still
I think he was
kind of way of thinking,
or something happened to him early that got into him and made, you know, a nurture that made him the way he is, and he's dealing with it in the books of blood and his horror, because he's described recently that the guy who wrote all that stuff is dead, and he could never replicate any of that. Whoever that was is gone. He wrote that in a recent preface of the Books of Blood.
Well, of course. So you're talking about the younger author and the older author.
Yeah, he was a lot angrier back then.
He said
he was so pissed off back then.
He said I could never replicate any of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at like at Homer, for instance, right? If you look at the Odyssey versus the Iliad, you can tell which one was written first and which one was written later, right? And it seems obvious to me that, you know, the Iliad was written later because it's so much less serious, right?
Well, not just that, but it's warrior tribes beating each other up, and then the Odyssey is now philosophy's coming in. The wits are taking precedence over fighting.
Right.
You know, that's how I can tell that it comes later.
Yeah. But of course, you know, we all the person that you were 20 years ago, the person maybe in some cases that you were an hour ago, isn't the same person that you are now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's especially true with artists. And you know, we hope that our work matures. We hope that we get better. It's practice, and you know, I look back on most of my old work and I cringe, but then I look back on some of my older work and there are a couple of things I'm really quite fond of still.
And you go, I wish I could write that well again. You're like that was pretty good. Like, that's happened to me a couple of times where you read some old script and you read it and go, this ain't half bad. Who wrote this?
Right.
I've
been conglomerating all of my files from like the last 15, 20 years into like, you know, terabyte drives, and it is, oh my God, it's like going through a virtual garage and then getting lost in all the cool shit I'm finding.
This is amazing. Why I print everything. This is why I print everything, and I always have a print copy. It's easier to sort through than like, you know, digital files and shit.
I print too. I do the same thing.
I just
Copy of
can't
both.
stand paper around me. I have to have everything clean.
Yeah,
Can't stand paper around you, says the guy with a bunch of books behind him. Really?
But that's
Those
beautiful.
are different paper.
That's beautiful
not
and
loose
orderly.
paper.
It's
Yeah,
not just
man.
it's not like Rush Limbaugh's stack of stuff, like
right. They're beautiful hardcovers.
Yeah, see,
So,
that's beautiful to look at. Look at these beautiful spines.
Yes, like
So I have-
like Through the Woods. Can't wait to have Through the Woods on my bookshelf.
Dude, look at him.
I have
Oh,
another
spinner racks.
And I need to join the spinner rack club.
Oh, this is so
Dude, Dan posted the link in the what was it? The Couch Doodles page, I think, or on his page for the spinner racks.
Oh, it's just so cool.
I just
So,
bought a stack of Youngblood on eBay.
Yes,
I have
yes, Jay.
Dude, I got
I have a
stack of Brigade the other
question for you
day.
guys.
Yeah, Shay.
Have you guys read Beware the Night?
No.
Also titled Deliver Us from Evil, but the book, not the movie.
Who's the author?
Okay, so this got turned into a movie. The author is a dude named Ralph Sarchie, who, how many years was he on? So he's a retired NYPD sergeant. He was on the NYPD for 18 years. And basically, this book is probably one of the coolest and most horrifying demonic accounts I think I've ever come across. This guy he was a skeptic through and through. He was a hardcore atheist. He was like, no, there can't be a God. I have seen far too much evil being on the NYPD, and all the children I've seen, all of these horrible things that happen. No God would ever let this happen, right? It's a common angry at the world atheist kind of trope.
Right.
Well, what ends up happening is he ends up coming across a person who cops were called and everything because they were behaving very erratically. And when he shows up, that person they're not on drugs. They're not just belligerent. They're not human anymore. And in an effort to try and understand what the hell is going on, he ends up befriending a person who is a priest. And he went to an exorcism, like an actual exorcism. He witnessed an exorcism happen. And he basically came back and was like, I was so wrong. I am 100% Christian now. Like, holy shit. There is no way. And so he went from NYPD beat cop, total, like, none of this could be real, to staunch believer, now somebody who is working with priests while still being on the police force to fight against this stuff. He talks about the things that he experienced and the things that happened, and they are really some of the most ridiculous and horrifying things that I've heard. And it's not that anything particularly terrible happens. It's the small things, but it's the daily and like the persistence of them. At one point, his wedding ring went missing, right? And he was talking about how when something like this happens, it's usually something that is very valuable to you, something that you treasure. So his wedding ring goes missing, and he's like, yep, this has happened plenty of times. It was gone for months. He had given up looking for it. He was in the bathroom. I think he was shaving one day. And out of nowhere, in a bathroom that is the size of most bathrooms, so there's not enough room for there to really be much behind you. He felt something get pelted at the back of his head, and then he heard a ting on his tile. He looked down, it was his wedding ring.
God damn.
His wedding ring that had disappeared 4 months or whatever before came hurtling from a wall behind him that could not have had more than 2 feet from where he was standing, pinged him in the back of his head enough to give him a goose egg, and dropped on his tile floor. Now, the reason
that's
I bring
a
this
message.
up,
That's a message right there.
That's an asshole poltergeist.
yes. So the reason I bring this up
Spectral
is
transference.
because I read this And I was like, holy shit, that's super creepy. But maybe it didn't actually happen that way, and he's embellishing for effect, right? While I was in England, my wedding ring went missing. My wedding ring was missing for 8 months.
Oh my God.
Completely gone, right? I accused my spouse of taking it. We turned the entire house upside down. We shook every single piece of clothing, checked in every box, went through gone. This is gone. Right. Same time that this was happening, we were having things like the smoke detector upstairs would go off for 3 beeps at 3:33 at night. Just go up just enough for you to get up out of bed for it to stop. There was like a heavy feeling around my house this entire time. We lost our dog. It's a really horrific story that I'm not going to share here because it didn't make any sense. She passed away.
How many sets of 3?
A lot.
Uh-huh.
So I didn't keep track, but I want to say probably 3 sets of 3 with the alarm. So yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's mockery of the Trinity.
Super fun. So the creepy part about all of this, right? We're getting ready to PCS back to the States. I've got everything ready for the movers coming the next morning. We are on our way out the door, and I'm like, hold on a second. I need to go move the clothes that I have in the washer over to the dryer so they'll be dry so they can pack them. And he's like, all right, hurry. We need to get going. We need to get to the hotel. Cool. I go over and I open up the front load washer. And this front load washer had been very well loved. There was the little rubber ring that goes around to keep it sealed.
Yeah.
That had 2 gigantic gashes in it, right? They were probably each about 2 to 3 inches long that were right at the base of this thing. When I opened it up, my wedding ring was on either side. If it would have gone an extra 1/4 of an inch to the right or to the left, because it broke off into its 2 pieces. So it was sitting in it broke off. It fits together. So it was separated, off in its 2 pieces. On either side of these gashes, if it would have been 1/4 one way or another, it would have fallen into the washing machine. I would have never known. I would have never seen it. It would have never been recovered.
Holy shit.
8 months after not having my wedding ring, I got it back the last night I was in that house.
Woo.
That
Wow.
is very, very freaky.
If you want a really, really good and something that I am now sitting here going, probably pretty accurate book to read, go look up Ralph Sarchi's. It's Deliver Us from Evil is what they changed it to after the movie. But it was originally called Beware the Night. And it basically, he just goes through and he recounts all of his experiences that he's had with demonic entities and exorcisms and stuff as a member of the police force.
Has anyone seen The Right with Hopkins?
Yes.
Oh,
very good. Very good.
I think I saw the extras on there about the priest who actually dealt with real exorcisms. And there was I'll just say real quick, there was a story with this old lady who was frail and she had like a hunchback, scoliosis or whatever, and she was frail with a cane. And he said he tried to do the exorcism to her, and this demon sort of possessed her. He said she stood straight up, threw her cane across the room, picked up one of those heavy old school stools, and flung it across the room. He goes, there's no way this woman could have physically done it. I mean, this comes from a priest, and I'm like, when I see based on a true story in a movie, that usually scares the shit out of me too.
Of course.
So Olivia Munn is the person who plays Sarchi's.
I was muted.
Oh,
what was that?
I was gonna say something, but I was muted while I was saying it. But I think you're onto something there about the stiff and straight up thing. Is that I don't know? There's something really frightening to me about demonic possession, body horror, that is
takes away your autonomy.
Not just that, but depriving the body of dignity.
Yes.
I don't like. I have a personal revulsion at human beings lacking dignity. It's one of the things that scares me. So, for example, when somebody has maybe dementia or they have Alzheimer's, and they're defecating themselves. It's a lack of dignity of the human being, and I think that's a very scary thing. So when I see demonic possession films or stories, it usually involves defiling the human body, right? Like in The Exorcist, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah.
There's one in particular. There's an image that always stuck in my head from a film called The Possession of Emily Rose.
Oh yeah,
There's a scene. There's a scene where the boyfriend of her is talking, and he's sleeping, and he wakes up. This was such a shocking image to me. It made me jump when he looks over and she's contorted in that rictus, looking at him with the dilated eyes.
Oh,
and he kind of wakes up and looks on the ground, and she's contorted into a rictus.
Yeah.
That to me really shook me. Like, whoa, like just her frozen like that. And that really gets to me is the defilement of the human body. That always does something to me on a very primal level.
There's a movie that you might want to take a look at. It's not perfect. It's actually quite flawed, but it's called The Taking of Deborah Logan. And that's about a young lady who's taking care of her mother, who's deteriorating from Alzheimer's. That's my life right now. I'm taking care of my mom.
My grandmother had Alzheimer's. So
my grandmother had something like that too.
It's horrific. You know, you're watching the person that you. I mean, the good part of it was that I got a chance to say goodbye, right? And we got a chance to say goodbye to each other. But my mom's pretty much like a toddler now, and I can never host a live stream because at a moment's notice, boom, I gotta go.
My grandmother had that same very degenerative version of it, where she does become a toddler and forgets basic adult skills.
Yeah, and also has a tendency to wreck shit if I don't keep my eye on her. And this
plays into the dignity thing again, right? Because
absolutely. The Taking of Deborah Logan's pretty good, but one film that I thought really captured that perfectly was Richard Stanley's recent version of the Color Out of Space, right?
I haven't seen that yet. I've heard good things.
It's the best Lovecraft movie ever made, in my opinion.
Wow.
It's a good return for Richard Stanley. I was very happy to see him come back.
Me too. Because I never thought it was going to happen.
He pulled Terrence Malick. He disappeared for 20 years.
He did. And he's doing the Dunwich Horror next, which I can't wait for.
And I think now is his time. You know, not to go on a Stanley tangent, but now it's his time, and I'm looking forward to seeing him be successful.
Well, thank goodness, we've got an era where we have crowdfunding. And that was pretty much a crowd-funded movie, the same way that Mandy was, I believe, by the same people, right?
Mandy's great too.
Mandy's fucking awesome. And but
my kind of love story.
Absolutely. And there's a scene in that captures in The Color Out of Space that captures perfectly the horror of taking care of somebody that you love and while watching them disintegrate. And because Richard Stanley took care of his mother while she was dying from cancer, and so he knew exactly what that feels like, and he conveys it in that movie ruthlessly. Because there's a part of you, of course, that wants to stay with your loved one, that refuses to abandon them. But at the same time, there's a part of you, a half of you, that is screaming, that wants to just run out of the room screaming and never stop running. And he captures that absolutely beautifully. That's fucking horror. And it's the sort of thing that I think is one of the reasons why when we go through something really horrible like we've been going through with the pandemic, I was telling all my friends I made a video recommending, like, these are the pandemic horror movies that you want to watch right now, because I think horror, like all art, is about healing the soul. And
it's about explaining the dark. It's about making sense of what we don't see.
That too. But I also believe that it serves the same function that all art serves, which is helping us make sense of our crazy lives, and also to validate our emotions, really, You know, God, I'm sounding like an
horror lets you be
SJW going off
moral.
about his fifis, but yeah.
The Skeleton Key. Have you guys seen The Skeleton Key?
Horror lets you be moral.
It's
when
the thing on the
society won't let
doorstep.
You know.
I'm sorry.
Horror lets you be moral when society won't let you.
Yeah, that too.
It's really what it is, because horror really does act out an inverted morality and saying, you guys, it's sort of reflecting the values of society back at it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because we can't help but read certain authors and then try and figure out like what is this telling me about that person, and I think sometimes that can be deceptive, and yet I think it's very difficult for us to leave our own view of the world out of our work. Like, I mean, I'm someone who believes that that we live in a fallen world, and that's something that can't help but be reflected in my work. And Brian, like this. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to throw this at you, this example, what I mean about the reflection aspect. And I was telling this to Shay offline last week, but I want to tell it to you and get your thoughts on it. I was rewatching the film Species. You remember that movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
And what really creeped me out about that movie was the values that it was showing me, right? So the main character is a hybrid alien who breaks out of a government facility and decides that her imperative is she wants to have a child.
Like Weapon X, but sexier.
But you have this beautiful woman who wants to have unprotected sex and have a child, have a life. And guess what happens? The multicultural squad from the government that has a clip-haired career woman with no children comes after trying to kill her for having children and wants to impose an abortion on her, essentially. And what's the clip-haired feminist, career woman doing? Banging Michael Madsen in a hotel room while this one is actually having sex with a man in the next room and having children from it.
Yeah,
it was a really
Alfred Molina.
Alfred Molina.
She's the good guy still. She's the woman who just wants to have a child, and the government's trying to make her abort it.
Yeah, but she's like some kind of HR Giger beast,
exactly.
man.
But they make her the beast. You get what I'm saying?
But she's been sent as a weapon. She's been sent as a weapon. I know that Jean Rollin. I don't know if you folks are familiar with his films. He's kind of obscure. I am a very big fan of his. He makes these very odd, very strange, sort of like vampire movies. With a lot of nudity, a lot of girl-on-girl action. There are a lot of people refer to them as softcore pornography. I don't think they are meant to be arousing. Personally, I think that the nudity and everything, it's just part of that landscape of his world.
What year? What year were these films?
70s. The 70s.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And then he did one that I think is his masterpiece, which is called Living Dead Girl, which is made in, I think, in 80, 81, 82. And that's where the song. And that
Rob Zombie just started up in my head.
Of course, that's where he changed.
That's probably what I'm thinking of is that Rob Zombie song.
Well, what's great about this movie is I've shown it to a bunch of my friends, and it's about a young lady who just died prematurely. She's brought back to life by like toxic waste, and she has an insatiable appetite for human blood, and she's an amnesiac. And as the story goes along, she starts regaining a little bit more of her memory with each murder, right? And so her best friend finds her, and she decides that she's going to protect her. But meanwhile, her friend is going out and killing people, and in grisly, brutal fashion. It's one of the few Jean Rollin movies that actually has superb makeup effects. And so as the story's going along, it follows the same progression that all of his films do, which is to say people start out laughing at the movie because they think it's ridiculous. Right? Then they're like, oh, wait a second. This guy's an actual filmmaker. He knows what he's doing. So then they're laughing with it. And then by the time they get to the end of their movie, their hearts are broken. He just reaches in and just guts you. And because I want to tell you the ending of the film. because I remember showing it to a bunch of friends, and it was great because I'm just like sitting there and they're all laughing at the movie. I'm like, yeah, okay, bitches, you just wait. And and then they're laughing with it.
Don't tell them nothing about it. Yeah, I like to do that with Black Christmas. Just don't say anything about the film.
Yeah, but check it out. Check it out. Genre-lyn, Living Dead Girl. Okay. And Shay, definitely you're gonna dig this. You're gonna dig this in particular, I think, because crap, I can't talk about the ending, but it does involve the amnesia angle and the fact that this person, as they're killing more and more people, they're becoming more and more themselves. And then the film ends with the ultimate horror. And it was so fucking great because when that movie ended, you could have heard a pin drop in the room. And my friends were there just with their, just gobsmacked. And I was just like, Chah!
Hey, Brian, where can we find that film? Where can we find the movie?
Redemption put out a DVD and a Blu-ray edition. I don't think you're going to be able to find. I don't think it's on Shudder. I don't think it's. Oh God, where can you find it on streaming? You might have to get it from a dubious place.
Yeah,
I'm not a streaming guy. I'm an analog guy. You know.
I have no idea what you're talking about, matey.
There's something. Yes.
See all these DVDs and Blu-rays behind me, man. I'm an analog brother, and now they've got these gorgeous, stunning fucking Blu-rays. But yeah, if you're looking for it, you can definitely find it on Amazon. But then, of course, you're gonna have to pay $20 or something for a movie you don't know.
That's it.
But
it's only available on SD. You can rent it for $3 or buy it for $14.
That's a good
Shay, you are the bomb.
That's a good last word for Brian to have, a recommendation. So that's a good recommendation for a last word.
Have you guys ever seen the Island of Lost Souls?
Of course, Charles Lawton.
I have the Criterion disc.
Yeah,
Nice.
Me too.
Love that one.
For Carnival.
You know, H.G. Wells hated that movie.
Understandably.
He hated that movie. He's like, no, you're missing the point, man. Because they played up the horror aspect too much.
but also Charles Lawton's Moreau is a mustache twirling villain, right? That's a very hammy performance. It's a very hammy performance, intentionally hammy, right?
I mean, he kind of leaned into it. Yeah.
But in the original story, the one thing that comes across about Moreau is that he's a sociopath. That the pain that he causes others, he just doesn't feel it.
It's much more basic, man. I just laugh my ass off when they throw that dummy of Marlowe over the ship. It's like and lands on his head.
Still a fucking It's still mind you, it's a balls out horror movie.
It's a pre-code movie, so
yeah, and
there's a lot of fun stuff way back when.
Oh, most definitely.
Captain Dr. Caligari.
Oh
Shay,
well,
you want to speak?
All right, guys.
Hours about that shit.
We could, but we're not going to.
But we're not going
to. Shay is getting slippy.
Have we been helpful in any way, madame?
Yeah, so every time we do this, it's always really entertaining. And I think that horror is probably one of the harder genres to do well. I think that a lot of horror writing is probably going to turn into super suspense. Sometimes action, sometimes really good epics, but trying to keep something that is going to genuinely scare people and kind of hit them and stay with them. It's a very difficult art form to do, and so we'll see if personally if I even come close to it. I don't know that I will. I'll have to dip into some shit that I don't know if I'm ready.
You gotta try.
I will try.
We got your back. You know that, right?
Absolutely. You guys always have my back.
Do not.
There is no try.
1,000 monkeys and 1,000 typewriters. We'll get it done eventually.
Eventually, is very true. So,
I got 1,000 monkeys up in my head.
I really appreciate all you guys kind of coming out and talking about all the crazy stuff we've been talking about. The chat, we've had some awesome people there. We've got Timothy and Leg have kind of stayed with us for the long haul because they're super great. We had a lot of people.
Good old Leg Kick. What up, Gary?
Leg Kick's awesome. Leg Kick shows up all the time. That's great.
That's my homie.
Hail the people in the chat.
I think Frega's live right now, so
I know Ethan was live.
It's okay. So this is how Red Valkyrie operates. We stream whenever the fuck we stream, and if people stream against, then that happens. I don't care because I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about, and there are going to be people who are going to want to hear, and if not, they can watch the replay. But
exactly, this will be gold content later.
Exactly. So. So I really appreciate you guys all coming out. Make sure that you check out Black Flag, which is Will and Luke's little baby they've been working on. Super amazing. Make sure that you get yourself some Through the Woods, because that is
Hail, Frankie.
Oh my goodness.
Brother of the Boner King.
I had to do it.
You did. And I don't know why I was surprised, but it shocked me. It was a jump scare.
Jump scare. There we go.
Oh, so looking forward to Through the Woods.
I stuck with the theme.
You did. You did, and I'm proud of you for it. And then, of course, we have Brian. If you want some crazy Western guerrilla funness, go and check out Six Gun Gorilla.
Oh, that's yours, Brian? Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And issue number 8 is going to be illustrated by the great Preston Acevedo, and he is also doing, I can't freaking believe this, a full color canvas painted cover. So,
oh wow!
Yeah,
canvas, huh?
Yeah, baby.
Oh shit! All right.
Yeah, baby. We're getting close to 14K, so hopefully you're going to join the 14K club soon. We shall see. Oh, because all that money is going to Preston to make more comics.
Well, so I just wanted to make sure we got all those plugs out there. Of course, if you are not subbed to Red Valkyrie, please give us a sub, give us some watches. We just crossed 800 subs, which is
hell.
You guys are awesome.
Smash that subscribe button.
Please do. And yes, I got a horn. But thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you to everybody in the chat. And we will absolutely catch you for the next episode of Writing Prose next Sunday at 10 p.m. Eastern. And until then, see you later.
Peace out.
Peace.
For life.